Yes, indeed, folks. We are back. Another month, another Grin Grappler. It feels like a lifetime ago we did one of these. It was before Mania. It was a different world entirely. We're back nonetheless. Very special episode, as always, really, at this point ahead of us. Great Bam Bam, Terry Gordy.
We've since last Grin Grappler lived through the famed Tomohiro Ishii and Nick Nemeth match. So it's a different world we're living in now.
It is. New timeline. It's also a different world because on Friday, we did, we did that draft show that was, I mean, it's pretty dynamic, pretty volatile, dare I say. Things got a little out of hand there for a moment, but the people seem to like it, so we're thrilled by that, and we'll not comment on the robbery that was the result. So, as I said, Grin Grappler, Terry Gordy. Terry's actually been kind of back in the news is the wrong word, but Dark Side of the Ring, right? So like this is kind of a rare occasion where we're timely. So here we are.
And also him getting that elite figure for the big nerds in the industry. That's honestly a quick way to bring you back to light too, with the way wrestling figure collecting goes these days. That elite figure he got, which I haven't seen it anywhere, but like it comes with the wardrobe change, so you can do an executioner too, right?
Yes, it's a 2-for-1. Yeah, they did something similar with they made a Sid from when he was the special guest referee at SummerSlam.
I can't turn my camera there, but I have it on the outside wall.
Yeah, it's a 2-for-1 also. So yeah, it's a cool deal. I'm going to probably try and pick up the Terry Gordy. The Grin Grapplers, I feel I'd like to have a figure of most of those guys, though. Stan Hansen may be an issue based on the price of those new sets. But anyway, we digress, folks. But nonetheless, we were without our fearless leader, High Chancellor of all things Grins, Bobby Two Shoes. We wish him well. We love you, Bobby. But we're going to try our best here to make things work with a 3-man booth. Those never work in wrestling, right? But we'll try our best here tonight. The Oracle of Wrestling, great to see you as always. Chief, how are you?
I'm well. Bobby, he had something, that he needed to do, and that's fine. But he really he's quite heartbroken about this.
He was.
It was like, damn, like he was.
I said Bobby, like, look, opportunities like that don't come up often, right? Like, if you can corner Lola Vice in NXT Underground, like, you got to go and do that, right? So, we kid, but yes, he was upset, and we miss Bobby, of course, in about 5 hours.
Yeah, Terry Gordy is such a wrestler up his alley that I doubt he had seen much of before, so that was probably part of it. Yeah,
totally. He loves that archetype, right? Although I am thankful for him that in about 5 hours when we're wrapping up our post show, he won't be, being too polite to leave us. He doesn't have to worry about that tonight. So we hope Bobby is well, of course. Alex, how are you, mate?
Doing well. Back in the fold. It's I've been, I think, the most active I've ever been on LNG the past month, so it's becoming a regular. But yeah, in my younger years, I probably could have been talked into starting the show with a big thing of dip in my mouth and simulate the Terry Gordy persona, but too old for that shit now. So I might say Bill Mercer a few times throughout this, but an interesting one we've got in front of us here. Always excited to talk about the Sport of Kings with you guys, and yeah, let's add another one to the hallowed halls of Grin Grappler.
Absolutely. If we've learned one thing from your increased activity with the late night Grin is that you're incredibly mature, very, above kind of bits and that kind of chicanery, right? So that's good. I'm glad you kind of drew the line there. But yeah, this is a unique one. Unfortunately, the more wrestlers that you do in the format like this, the more kind of tragic tales are going to emerge. It's just kind of I was looking at some of the grapplers we could do next month, and I actually took a couple of those out just because I was like, I try to avoid 1-2 punches in that regard, but wrestling is just packed with those stories. This one is very unique in that a huge part of Terry Gordy's story is that for the, last decade of his career and life, he wasn't really Terry Gordy, right? Like I guess that's the easiest way to phrase it. But what makes him strange is, as a body of work, is he was around for so long before that because of how early he started, right? It's like we have a lot of matches. Like I have a stat here somewhere. I think Terry Gordy cage matches him at 2,100 matches for his career. he wrestled 747 matches for All Japan Pro Wrestling, according to CageMatch.net, which is like, I mean, it gives you some perspective on how long a career he had, which is even more striking when you realize that it was kind of, wasn't stopped, but really it was changed forever in '93. So
also the fact that he was 40, right? He was only 40 when he died, or 41, 42,
yeah,
something like that.
because
So,
the incident in '93, I believe he was 32, which is like, if he was on TV today at 32, he'd be one of the younger guys being pushed.
I was about to say, they don't let you on NXT until you're 42.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And again, it isn't like a direct comparison because he started earlier, and you can tell in the last match that his body is feeling it. It goes without saying. It's still wild to think about, though. It really is. So, yeah, this is a unique one. I think our acts kind of reflect that too, but we'll get into that in a moment. First, we'll start as we always do by talking about our individual Terry Gordy fandoms. But first, folks, if you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, we hope you're having a great night. We know there's a lot on tonight. There's NBA playoff basketball. We've got NXT spring break-in. So there's so much going on, and some of you have chosen to spend your night with us. We appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe. If you're watching elsewhere, please continue to do so. But if at some point you can stop through the old YouTube and help us out, that would be great. We're almost at 1,000 subs, fellas. We're at like 970, I think we're at. So we're on the up and up around here, so we appreciate the support. All right. I'm intrigued by this because I think I'm going to be the low man in this regard just because of who I'm doing this show with. So I'll start with you, Alex. Your Terry Gordy fandom. Tell me about it. I'm intrigued.
Well, I didn't know it was Terry Gordy, but I very vividly remember when the Executioner debuted at Buried Alive because he broke a shovel over the Undertaker's head. And then they wrestled at the pay-per-view. I think it was the pay-per-view that was headlined by Brett and Sid for the title. And that was it. He got two. I think when I was a kid, I thought the Undertaker just killed him, and that's why he was gone. And so, but he just, he lost the pay-per-view match, and that was it. And we never heard from the Executioner again. And we'll get to that a bit later. A quick sidebar: the Jack's bone crunching action WWF action figures. The Executioner is one of the only rare ones. That's for those of you who may be fans of the Major Brothers podcast. That was a revelation I learned early in their run, was because the Jack's figures were made in such high quantity because they sold so high, none of them are really considered rare. The only ones that are actually rare are, they said, kind of the Blue Blazer, but specifically the Executioner. And there was an Ultimate Warrior that the deco on it was only in one set that was released in a Toys R Us or some shit. So yeah, the Executioner's got two figures now. Son of a bitch. Bull Nakano has one in the history of her career. So, like any child of the 90s that watched ECW late in syndication, Oracle might be just a shade too young for this, but his brother Dylan would definitely know what I'm talking about. When I hear Terry Gordy, what immediately comes to mind is the commercial for Extreme Warfare Volume 2, which played on syndication for ECW for every show forever. That's their highest selling videotape. It was the one that had Tommy Dreamer and Brian Lee in the scaffold match. It had Chris Jericho when that meant something against Sabu. It had it was sold so well because that was the one where they had that kimono striptease that they put on tape and sold. But I can always just hear Joey Styles in my head. It's the Battle of the Bam Bams as Scott Bam Bam Bigelow takes on Bam Bam Terry Gordy in that just fucking nasally droll that he had. But so that's immediately what comes to mind as far as my first memories of Terry Gordy. And then, like anyone who has the affliction that we have of being a professional wrestling fan, you reach a certain point where you want to see more and more and learn more and more. And World Class, my dive into World Class was like, holy shit. And the Japanese stuff, and we're going to talk about a good chunk of that too, we have already in the past. He's already entered Grin Grappler lore with some of his work in Japan. It obviously, there's a lot there, and that's an understatement. But Terry Gordy, as a member of the Freebirds, and specifically his performance in World Class that kind of segued into his Mid-South shit, is that's an all-time wrestler aesthetic voice, like the presentation of it. I became just like immediately enchanted with it. And like back in the forum days, he was a guy that you would see gifs of roughing people up or pushing fans. And then he's big on the on Twitter of like the people like posting like, look at this guy, like you remember Terry Gordy, that kind of thing. So I don't have the childhood memories of him I would like Hulk Hogan or something, but I remember the name. And then when I got older and had wider access to footage and stuff, he's someone I kind of fell in love with their work. And then it's not really Shakespearean, but I think when we finish the third act, we'll talk about like the tragedy that came. But it's as someone like me, a hopeless romantic that delves into like the story of everything, his story has always been pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope to kind of get into that and paint a picture at best we can here tonight, folks. I found myself in a weird spot with this one because I've watched much of Terry Gordy's work. I like a lot of it. I've always, I've never really had a strong connection to it. However, my first kind of memory of seeing the stuff, I've often talked about falling in love with the early 90s WCW, kind of era. And I had that experience that I think a lot of fans had of like, what I knew of Miracle Violence Connection was the stories and the tales. And sometimes they wasn't quite that when you actually saw them in action, right? That's something we'll get into. And I think, I don't want to kind of disparage that legacy. I know it's a team people love very much, but they are, I think, one of the ultimate, like, sometimes the idea of them was cooler than the actual thing in front of you. So that kind of like, it kind of took away my my immediate, or kind of limited my immediate fandom. But then as you get deeper into it, and you mentioned, Alex, we've done 2 Gordy tags before from All Japan, right? We did him and Hansen versus the Funks, and him and Hansen versus Tenru and Kawada, maybe? I forget. Going off the top of my head with that. Yeah. You kind of have a great appreciation. I think he's a special one in that he was like a precocious talent, right? Like he appears to have been a natural. And I think, unfortunately, there are ways where his career could have played out differently and he could have kind of become, I guess, realized more of his potential. As is, he still had a great career. It goes without saying. It's just
size-wise, it's like a really bad comparison, but just the parallels of like, you think of Rey Mysterio Jr. and Terry Gordy in the sense of they both started when they were like 14 and were like prodigies for like what they became in the industry. And obviously one of them has gone on to be one of the most celebrated baby faces of all time, and makes you kind of wonder if certain decisions were made differently in life.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you don't want to dwell on what could have been, but I do think it's hard in his case. Which, again, we'll talk about what was here because there's still a lot of great work here. So yeah, I'm very aware of, I've seen a lot of, I can't say I have a great connection to. Doing this always helps in that regard. And I definitely think a couple of these matches highlight how much of a natural he was at kind of the little things of the in-ring performance, right? The kind of some of the details he has, I think were really showcased in some of these singles matches in particular. So we'll get into that tonight, folks. But Oracle, I'm intrigued. I know this one's a little bit of this one's kind of close to the heart, right, for you. Tell us about your fandom with Terry Gordy. Go for it.
Yeah, so I was born in South Carolina when I was 7 years old. So long story short, my parents met in Tennessee in Chattanooga and got married in Chattanooga, whatever. And they moved down to South Carolina in the early 80s, and then we moved back in 2000 when I was 7. And I hadn't really, heard of Terry Gordy or anything in kind of the first year I'd watched wrestling. I was just an ordinary kid watching Raw, and SmackDown and whatever. But when I moved up to Tennessee and North Georgia, Terry Gordy was a name that was, heard all the time because that was his home. That's where he's from. He lived there, at that point. He was in Saudi Daisy. And I actually got to see, and I posted the link here in the private chat, and hopefully, Joe, if you can find a way to post it to everybody in the group chat. There's a match Terry had 9 days before he died that I saw live. Obviously he was, in I mean, I was 8 years old. I didn't know the difference, but in retrospect, Terry doesn't look great here. But I mean, it's just it's just a cool piece of history that I'm glad to say I was
For sure.
I was there for. Not long after he passed, Ray Gordy, his son of Jesse and Festus fame and Slam Master Jay fame, got big on the indies, and he was the local kind of wrestling star that everybody talked about. Man, you got to see Terry's kid. You got to see Ray Gordy, and for what it's worth, Ray was a good worker. He just had injury issues, and amongst other things, and
Yeah.
his career, unfortunately didn't get to work out, the way he wanted to. But I think he was there to induct his dad into the Hall of Fame, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. It was. And for some reason, Jimmy Garvin was there.
Yeah. That's right, because that was at Mania 32, right, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because I remember they were there when in the longest show in the history of the world. But when they were doing the Hall of Fame bit. But yeah, man. Terry was a huge name growing up. I'm very glad I got to see him when I became a super nerd in my teenage years. The 80s sets. I'll never forget going over to my. So Dylan had stayed down in South Carolina, and I went back down there and visited him all the time when I was growing up, and like I remember he had like big world class set, and we watched it, and we watched the Killer Khan match, which we'll talk about here. A bunch of the Freebirds tags with the Von Erichs. Just stuff that you had heard so much about them, and I remember just like it was super cool to see the Freebirds, just because they were just such a big part of the Chattanooga area. And in fact, I'm gonna keep going. Terry wrestled in the late '70s at the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, which was the main home of NWA Mid America, which was terrible because Goulas' son, who was what was his name? Nick Goulas' boy. What was his name? He teamed with Bobby Eaton in the Jet Set. He killed the company.
Let me find this. Carry on. I'll get it.
What's his name? The Freebirds with them.
It was George.
Yeah, George. Yeah. The Freebirds feuded with George and Bobby. I think some, and they wrestled at the Memorial Auditorium every week, which is a building that I've been into many times and have walked by many times, especially when I was a student at UT Chattanooga, because it's right there on the edge of campus. So that's other cool part of history. Another neat part is Terry's originally a Rossville, Georgia boy, which is at the state line. I went to high school in Ringgold, Georgia, which is a little bit further south, but pretty much at the state line too. And he went to Rossville High School, which by the time I was in school pretty much no longer existed. It was Rossville Middle School, and I used to play soccer in that field. And it was notorious for having like grass that was like never like kept up or like cut. So like it's like, but yeah, so like just cool tidbits about that. Just like being from the same area, there's a connection. I mean, I never, he gave me a high five one time when he walked to the ring, I think, and that, but other than that, I never met the guy. But you have that connection, just from a place where you grew up with. But yeah, man, I mean, he definitely has been picked apart, on the message boards over the years, rightfully so, in some ways, and in other ways, not so much. I mean, when you have a stroke at 32 years old and severe brain damage, it's never going to be, it's tough on you after that. But in the 80s, man, badass, total badass, and I love the Wikipedia description they gave him here. If I can find it.
Oh my God.
What was it they put on here? He was known for his high octane Southern lifestyle outside of the ring. And as someone who
that's a way of putting it.
As someone who grew up in North Georgia and East Tennessee, that pops me huge because I've seen many of big fellas that reminded me, of it's especially in retrospect, whatever. They're definitely very, very similar to old Bam Bam. So, dip in the mouth.
High octane.
I mean,
dude, did you Oracle? Did you see that one picture I posted of him today for the episode where he has a belt buckle that says Terry Gordy on it?
That was crazy. Yeah,
that's
crazy.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, but just honestly, he's one of my favorites. Like, I just because we grew up in the same place, so that that definitely have a connection there. But he's just total badass, and he just reminds me of a bunch of like big fucking linemen that played in my high school football team.
He has such a particular he has such a particular vibe because he is a big man, and especially in some of these matches, he is a total badass, as you put it. But he also has that very particular face and that look, right? Like kind of like puppy dog eyes. He has such a sort of strange demeanor.
He looks like any redneck in fucking East Tennessee, dude. He's like 206, 275 pounds or more.
There's a very specific thing to call out. There's something that definitely rears its head in one of these matches about also he did not have the prototypical pro wrestling physique. Like he was lanky, but also had like big old core, man. And
he's one of these guys that like you look at him and look, none of us are, fucking tough guys or anything. Yeah. My God, I'd never want to get in a scrap with that. He beat the shit out of me.
Yeah. If Bob was here, he could.
He looks like a dude who could beat your ass.
He does, but that's kind of like. I think in some ways he looks more threatening because of the way his face and his hair and his demeanor. Like he looks insane.
He's got like a colonial wig haircut and like
he's genuine. And this is a good point too. I think this is a little bit of a lost piece of history. That dude could talk.
Oh yeah. Let me explain something to you people out there. He was dude. The Freebird promos, and I put like in preparation for this was like a week or two ago, but like which I'm sure will come up at some point. I watched one of their WWF promos, and like they had the rap. Like Michael would do like the smooth talking, and then Buddy would say something kind of sharp, and then Terry would just come in and fuck your whole life up with what he had to say. But yeah, like when he was on his own, he was great too, and he was one kind of circle back to this at the end, but like he was a guy, he was from that generation of you did not appreciate how big he was until you saw something like him wrestling Perry Saturn in ECW, where it was like, holy shit, this guy's a fucking giant. He was 6'4", 300 pounds, something like that. And it's he was a hell of a talker. He could make people happy, he can make them mad, and because of his look and his accent, you believed everything that he said.
Yeah, he absolutely felt authentic, and you never got the sense he was playing a character, quote unquote. That was never the vibe with Bam Bam Gordy. So
you never got he never said it's Terry time or something like that. He never said something that you were like.
He had a kind of like a horror movie, kind of like slasher vibe at times. The way he would talk and the wide eyes and great look. Now, as for our acts today, we kind of had to cheat the system a little bit, folks. It's always important to me that we don't like lose content in the name of treating the acts in a way that's proper. So really, it's like a free match third act, right? And the second act is like a kind of a one shot. I think is probably the best way to describe it. We'll navigate that as we go. But I think the first act, I think it made sense. It was fitting when we were putting this together. We needed a Von Erichs match on there, right? We needed that. And so that is where we start. July 4th, 1983. Now, it has to be noted that this is 9 years into Terry's career because, of course, he debuted at 13 years old, famously. So,
Grin Grappler first. We've had the same match on a different Grin Grappler, but like the same matchup. Excuse me, not the exact same match, but yeah.
Yeah. This is the Independence Day Star Wars, which Fritz, big Star Wars guy. This is what, just over 6 months removed from the big angle at Christmas, right? That was 82, right? The big, the swinging of the cage door. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just over 6 months into this angle. Now, the thing with this is, and I don't mean this to detract from the content of the match, which is actually tremendous, but the first thing you have to point out here, Alex, the heat of this. I mean, it's not like, I'm sorry it used to be better at 27 minutes, but you'll never hear a crowd like this again. I'm sorry to report. Like it's lost. They don't pop. They don't stop making noise. They're just roaring the whole time. It's unbelievable.
Did they say, is it the Fairgrounds Coliseum? I didn't catch where they said it was.
Sure.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't Reunion. I hate that there's some arenas I can just be like, that's what that is, and it definitely wasn't the Sportatorium. But from the jump, when Willie Nelson starts playing, and then when you hear Georgia, the crowd is and, like they just are pissed off and throwing shit at the Freebirds as they make their way down. And like, dude, we joked about this in the Von Erichs episode that we did, but when they come out, like they're just not sexually, but in the real definition of the word, just being like molested on the way to the ring. Like people are just like grabbing them, women are grabbing them, and like just they want to, I don't know, smell Carrie's hair or something like that. But it's just, and then the actual match starts, and yeah, it's just good.
Yeah, I'll stick with you, Alex. Take it away. Our first match, the Freebirds, the Von Erichs iconic feud. What did you make of our first of 6 matches here? Go for it.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to our Von Erich episode, go back. We talk about the Freebirds against the Von Erichs. The lineup was different. Lineup there was Kevin, Mike, and Fritz. Dusting off the boots and getting in the ring. But the endearing to me, I think I said this on that episode. To me, the image of world class, like what comes to mind, be it in the Sportatorium or here, it's David, Kevin, and Carrie giving the triple drop kick to Michael Hayes. That's like, to me, that's like the image. If Stone Cold giving Rock the Stunner or whatever you want, Taz and Sabu, whatever you want to like use to visualize a company, that's what I do to visualize world class. And the heat's just unreal. And like, honestly, the majority of this match is punches and kicks. And I was watching this and I was like, why did we ever get away from that? Like, why did Shawn Michaels have to come along? Like, why do we have to do all this shit? Because that's 20 minutes deep in the match. David's doing punches and the people are just losing their fucking mind. So my notes, let's see, the Georgia Heat I brought up. Kevin, this isn't about Texas and Georgia. This is about decency and filth. I don't know what I expected, but I still laughed when they said referee David Manning because I knew Oracle was going to have plenty to say about that.
He gets a high spot in here, doesn't he? He gets his own little...
Yeah. He gets the Shane Douglas promo, too.
Yeah. I also, I have to know, Alex, in the midst of your notes, I don't know if you got this, but, the way they used to mic the ring is like a thing with world class, right? Was that they were kind of ahead of their time. The boys had yet to adjust because at one point Terry just yells, "Small package!"
And with Gordy, he's just big and lumbering, and he comes in. He does that shit where he's still, his physique goes through transformations here too, and he was fucking still a kid here. But he'll puff his shoulders up and put his hands to the side and come in, and it's one of those tactics, to try to make yourself look bigger than you are, which he doesn't really have to do because he's a big son of a bitch anyway. But specifically, there's a moment in this match. There's like a couple hot tags. Kevin Von Erich gets a hot tag and just proceeds to beat the fucking shit out of Terry Gordy, dude. He does like a snapmare. He's kneeing him in the gut, and before Gordy tags out, he hits the ropes and blasts Kevin in the face with a forearm. It's beautiful. It's a very contrarian Alex moment in the match. Gordy gets the first fall with what else but a flying crossbody. So there you go. I sent this to the group chat earlier today, but one of my favorite things about Prime Von Erich matches is those boys would, be it naturally or chemically induced, get so fired up when those crowds got really hot, when they got them to a fever pitch, they would just start moving so fast. And there's a sequence in this where it kind of like falls apart for a second because Carrie and Kevin are just like going like a million miles an hour. They're so excited, but that makes it kind of fun. And for the purposes of what we're doing here, something to call out in terms of charm. LOL David Manning, my next note, when he gets, his big promo here of, I'll disqualify either team. Kerry Von Erich breaks out the Tenryu elbow where he climbs up and flies backwards, the old WCW Revenge World Tour, flying elbow. There's a really awesome moment in this where Michael Hayes is working over, I believe it's Kerry, with a bear hug. And Kerry slams him out of it, and Hayes, in the quickest I've ever seen him work in his entire career, does like a roll to tag in Gordy, and it's just really good teamwork. Like, I got slammed near my corner, so I got to get the fuck out of here. Big guy comes in, and he puts Kerry right back in the bear hug, and it's, take your time, milk him, brother. We already got their money. And Kevin gets back in towards the end of the match. And I don't, a receipt is the phrase, as I learned in the Florence Pugh film, Fighting with My Family. He shoots Kevin off the ropes and punches him in the Adam's apple, with extreme force and malice. I think the idea was a clothesline, but he zeroed in on what he was doing and just boom. And then, as someone who's kind of via accident, like working in the yard or some shit, had something hit you like that and know like the immediate like shock to your system it sends, I can't imagine someone like Terry Gordy whacking you right in the throat, what that would feel like. Yeah, we get Bronco Lubitsch in there at the end, and towards the end I'm like, Bronco's telling these boys to go home because he's not hitting his knees again. And it's the story, tale as old as time. Von Erichs win, crowd goes nuts, and it's sometimes the best outcome or the easiest outcome is the smartest one. And we've now, for the first time ever in our run, have done 2 matches from the same rivalry in 2 different episodes, or a match in 2 different episodes, and it's both of them are great, both of them are electric, and it makes sense. You can see why these guys drew a lot of money together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that atmosphere is hard to not focus on that. The matches, as you kind of laid out, it's actually very heat heavy, right? Because they're so into it. They do that really cool thing on the first fall where the hot tag like bleeds straight into the heels getting a fall.
Yeah.
Right, which I always think is like a good do you remember Oracle, you'll remember this. Do you remember the really cool 2 out of 3 falls that Harper and Rowan did with Jim and Jay? They did that, right? Whereas like the hot tag, you build to the hot tag and then boom, first fall to the heels. You can kind of do double heat, like layered. And they do that here. It's different here, obviously, because as Alex mentioned, Kevin's hot tag appears to be like a fight for his life. He in particular is unhinged here, but this is a hell of a time, Oracle. What did you make of it?
Oh yeah, just the whole presentation and just atmosphere alone, helps
Yeah.
it. This is not a match that's like, it's not even something you'd see out of a Midnights or Rock and Roll Express tag from the same time period. Those matches had a lot more flash, right? Sometimes the heat could be close. I don't think it was ever as much as that, but it was good. It could be close. Especially if Cornette was involved. Yeah. But like, they were a lot more flashy, right? Like a lot more. What they do here is, they let the crowd sort of carry the match, and they carry it with their personalities, and they do a really good job of like booking and executing the finish as well, and like having your sort of standard skeleton of like face in peril, hot tag, face peril, like it's very much like that. But otherwise, they're just letting it fucking fly, man, and like it rules. Like,
crowd really wanted Buddy's headgear to come off.
Yes. And of course, the honestly, my favorite part of the whole thing is like right when you start the video, Georgia on My Mind plays.
Yeah.
And immediately the fans, when they hear Georgia, they start this loud chorus of boos you can hear over like the insane loudspeaker. Like this music's like clear as day,
Yeah.
And huge chorus of boos, but yeah, just an incredible, like, this is honestly a match that, like, because I was looking up some match reviews afterwards, and like, people are calling this 4.5, 4 3/4, and 5, whatever, and it's because, and they're all saying it's not because of like work rate or whatever. That's not it. They just have the basic skeleton of what you want, and then just the real emotion, the raw sort of.
Was this the one Dave gave match of the year?
That was the following year, Independence Day, I think.
Okay.
I think. I could be wrong on that, Alex, but I think that's the case. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Oracle. We use the word struggle a lot to describe wrestling matches, and very seldom does it actually appear to be a struggle. This thing, it looks like they're struggling 95% of the time, right? At no point do the Von Erichs, when they're getting worked or when they're getting controlled and isolated in the heat, they never just concede position. And we have our fun with no one told them wrestling was fake and all that. But that is such a lost art now, right? Like when a babyface is selling now, it's like, okay, now the heel is supposed to take control of the match. I'll just lay here,
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed. I mean, this thing is supposed to feel alive. It's not supposed to feel like stalling.
The best wrestlers are the ones who don't who believe in their head that they are what they.
Yeah.
Who
are sitting there thinking, I need to get out.
Delusional psychopaths.
Yeah.
But that's what you want out of a wrestler,
Yeah. It's a total lost art. It's If the Freebirds give them any space during that heat, Von Erichs will just stand up and start fighting. They have to. That's the dance.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing to watch. I say beautiful. It's actually it's ugly at times, but that's the way it should be, right? Yeah. So, and the crowd responds accordingly. That's why they never lose the people during that heat. They're always with them. So, yeah, it's an electric deal. Great way to start off, and I think we needed some Von Erichs business on this grappler, right? I think we had to. So.
Wouldn't have been doing the whole story justice.
I certainly don't think so. Now, this next one,
buddy,
was an Oracle special. Right? I believe this was Oracle. This was your, and it immediately feels like an Oracle special too. Was this November 22nd, 1984? This is the Thanksgiving Star Wars. Again, big Star Wars guy. Killer Khan.
Can we just take a moment and Fritz going to see Empire Strikes Back in a movie theater? Can just picture it. He's got the Dickies jumpsuit on with the cowboy boots and the hat. Two for Empire. Then he goes in and gets the popcorn and the milk duds and shit, and just imagine. Picture Fritz Von Erich's face when you learn that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. He just turns to Doris and he's like, "Motherfucker, what?"
Yeah, that is that's a visual I'd be able to shake on, I think. But yeah, this is the first of we have two straight Texas Death matches here, which we'll establish now. Unbelievable to me they proceeded with doing this way for so long. Like the reset thing. Unbelievable. I'll get that out of the way now because I don't want to dwell on it. But it just every time I see it, I'm like, I can't believe didn't anyone just be like, can we not do this? Can we not just do like a 10 count? But nonetheless, that's the way it was done. Kerry is the referee here, which sets up a famous piece of business in the post match. I'd seen the post match, but not seen the match for this, weirdly enough. Yeah, which is like a really significant.
One of the great moments in the history of world class.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone who's not seen this, it's on the network on the December 1st, 84 TV of World Class. So if you want to see it on the network, it's on there.
I had to do something to make up for the lack of physical media in this. This match and the next one are both chronicled in a tremendous book titled The Way of the Blade, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a recounting of pro wrestling's most historic bloodbaths dating back decades. And it's every match, I know my light's kind of fucked up here, but every match has an individual illustration that's made for it. And it's written from the perspective of someone who you've never had to watch wrestling in your life to understand it, because it explains why the match is happening, who's involved in the match, and then the actual match and the outcome.
Phil Schneider wrote it. Terrific writer. One of the great sort of message board.
Yeah, he's brilliant,
guys. Yeah. Phil and my brother are very good friends. I've known Phil for a long time. That is a great book. I have it myself, Alex. Great reference point there.
Yeah. While we're doing LNG Book Club, Oracle, you and I got this. I want to quickly shout out.
Oh yeah, friends. I would have to stand up and get it, but I got my sitting ringside. Yeah,
the Penza. We've got Evans. Shout them out. Alex, what was you gonna say, mate?
Oh, I was just saying when I went down these matches, I was like, motherfucker, I don't have a single one of these on DVD or Blu-ray anywhere, so I'm gonna have to. I gotta have a prop of some sort, and I went back and reread the entries on these 2 matches, and I think that's honestly why I suggested the next one we're about to do, the Dr. Death one, because I remember reading about it in there. But yeah, just had to plug that where I could.
Did they ever do a world-class set, WWE?
Yes.
With the documentary, right?
Yeah, I don't own that one, so I'm not sure if that match is on there or not.
Okay.
But yeah, that one kind of came.
Yeah, there's a world-class set, but I don't think it's in circulation anymore.
I was going to say, there's definitely a set. I just don't know if it was the, I don't know if Josh Matthews was hosting it or whatever. But, all right, Killer Khan, Terry Gordy, Texas Deathmatch, unbelievably violent match. Like,
bro,
I thought it would be violent. I thought this was kind of astonishing in its violence. Killer Khan's like entire offense is just biting, and God, it's awesome. As Alex said earlier, who needs moves, right? But
yeah,
in the first 4, he just beats the hell out of Terry. And this is where I think you see the nuance to Terry as a worker, right? Like the way he can sell here as a big guy, and the way he can be sympathetic. There was depth to his game. This is something. Oracle, take away.
If I can, Alex, you might be able to help me fill in the blanks a little bit. I know when y'all are doing the World Class Fridays, I don't think y'all got to this point, but this is a heel versus heel program.
Yeah.
And Skandor Akbar was the manager of Killer Khan, and it was definitely Devastation in Incorporated here, right? Yeah.
Dev Corp.
Yeah. Yep. Devastation Incorporated. I always think of fucking like Mark Laurent screaming that out. Devastation Incorporated. Yeah. So, and they do a good job of explaining it, in the middle of the match. Like, basically, they're trying to recruit Terry and get him to turn on his Freebird guys, right?
Yeah.
And like have him join. And he's like, "Fuck that! I'm not turning on my brothers," Like,
yeah.
And that created and of course, Devastation Incorporated is treating with both the Von Erichs and the Freebirds now, and it gets this interesting situation where Kerry comes in to be the referee. And you kind of wonder, if Kerry's gonna be impartial or whatever. He actually did quite a good job as referee, because I forgot he was a ref in the match. And the only points I remember when they had it spotlighting him.
Yeah, I agree.
Getting involved with Skandor or whatever. That's also booking too. That's how you book a special guest ref.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a heel versus heel program, which sounds crazy, especially in the 80s. But World Class was so hot at this time. And it also goes to show how you have characters and you have these long established relationships and interrelationships with characters. Something like this can work.
Yeah, people care.
And it kind of reminded me of, like when the Usos forfeited that the gauntlet, trophy. This is that was not the same thing, but
no, I'm with you. I'm just laughing because
what you can do
if people care about the characters.
I didn't and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just kind of want to give the background because Terry wasn't really he was the face in this match, but it was really a heel versus heel program.
Yes.
And because of, naturally, Terry is the face in this match, but he's more of a, it's basically Devastation Incorporated are basically worse than the Freebirds.
They're worse heels, yeah. And the announcers, Mercer highlights that Terry, his loyalty, right? Like they kind of highlight that personality trait. No, the reason I was popping Oracle is because we've done 2 Uso references in 45 minutes, and I don't know if the betting line would have had that one in. We've done good tonight. So, but yeah, this kicks ass, dude. My goodness,
dude,
this is
total bloodbath. Like Terry's bleeding everywhere. Like he's bleeding all over the place. There are literally puddles of blood everywhere. And then when Khan opens up, the dude, I don't know where he bladed, but he blades on the top of his head, so a puddle forms on his bald spot on his head,
like a pillow.
He's laying on the mat, and he gets up. There's a giant. There's one shot, maybe in the third fall or whatever, where the camera's close, the camera under the bottom rope, and his face down, and when he lifts up, there's a whole soaking wet puddle of blood. Like, and they're just
I don't think that ring was too clean to begin with, but yeah.
No. And this was at Reunion Arena, correct, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah. There's just like those floors had to hurt because if I'm not mistaken, this is the match that because it was Sunday night I watched it. So Terry that gets tossed out of the ring at one point just takes a whole flat back bump on the fucking hard floor of Reunion Arena. I'm like, that
the Terry Gordy baby arms where you just throw them out to the side and
But yeah, this was just, I mean, what an absolute fucking classic this is.
Yeah.
I believe this was voted number 1 out of 150 matches from the world class set in the 80s. Like I believe it finished 1. Like
it's up there, man. Yeah.
It's just an absolute one of the great bloodbaths you'll ever see. Just two dudes hating each other, beating the shit out of each other, just bleeding everywhere. Of course, the finish is great where Skandor tries to get in to stop it, and then Carey, like, because they both hit right, and they have to do the is like they're both down or whatever.
Yes.
And like Skandor tries to come in to get Khan off the ground, and Carey just beats the shit out of him in a great finish. And then of course, Terry wins the match, and the post match is just legitimately
all time, yeah.
One of the great moments, and one of the great moments, really in the hit. Like, and I mean this in a lot of great moments. Let me be clear: a lot of great moments. One of the great moments in the history of wrestling, really, in modern wrestling. Carey's trying to shake Terry's hand. Terry's just covered in blood, looking like literally like Bill Mercer. Is that who's doing commentary?
Yeah.
He's talking about how at one point, talking about, Genghis Khan's wars, which was maybe a little bit insensitive. And then he was talking about they look like Vietnam War veterans or something. Like, they're just covered in blood. It came out of a fucking war zone. And Terry's just covered in blood.
Bill's out there having flashbacks to a foxhole, it sounds like.
Yeah. And, Carey leaves kind of, dejected, like, whatever, fuck off, Terry. He leaves. Terry Gordy gets in the bike and goes, "Carry on here, get your ass back in here." And then he shakes his hand to an explosive pop. Just one of the great, and it wasn't like I'm your buddy. It was just a respect, thank you for, making it a fair fight, and not letting Skandor get involved. Like, just one of the great moments in the history of world class. But honestly, one of the great matches of the 80s. This is, I mean, just a tremendous brawl.
Yeah, it's awesome. Bill on commentary, he has a line that was, I mean, very fitting, really. When Khan goes into the post, he declares Khan slashes his head open. Yes, indeed. That is indeed what he's doing. Spot on.
Because it's fake. He took a razor blade and cut his forehead open.
Yes, indeed. But this is something pretty special here, Alex. What did you make of it?
My first note in all caps just says, "Look at this shit." Because the match starts and it's Killer Khan. Look at him. And there's Terry Gordy. Look at him. And then Carey's the ref wearing jeans and a crop top. It's just like, this is all I want out of life from my sports is what's happening right here. Yes, Reunion Arena. I've been there twice. Once was the first ever pro wrestling event I went to. It was a WWF house show in 1991. And the other time was I went for the UFC 103 weigh-ins and got to see Mirko Cro Cop live and in person. So that was, the same place I saw Brooklyn Brawler is where I saw one of the, all-time legendary kickboxers. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, Terry Gordy, we learn here and in the next bout, doesn't fuck around when it comes to running the razor. He doesn't want to trickle. He wants a waterfall. So he understands what business calls for. And we talk about this in the Von Erich episode in depth, so I'm not try not to spend too much time on it. Excuse me. But Kerry Von Erich and the Von Erichs in general, just what you're talking about from the last match. They just knew how to not look dumb in situations, which is funny considering Kerry Von Erich. But in this match, anytime one of them tries to puff their chest out at him, he makes sure that he's not. He shows that he's not going to take that bullshit, and it's like that's everyone on the internet on the Twitter is still like praying for the downfall of Cody in the sense of the crowd turning on him. And Cody, like just to kind of modernize what I'm talking about here, is someone who's extremely intelligent when it comes to ensuring that he doesn't find himself in that situation where he looks like a punk or like, looks like, just like a fraidy cat to PC my wording up here. And then, because that
Make
was
sure he's not Seth Rollins. What you're saying? Oh,
well, I mean, that's a very extreme example, but like Cena was really bad about that too. Cena would find himself in situations where it's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Just beat this person's ass, and he wouldn't do it. And that's why the guys are like the vocal fans, the Bizarro World Mogul. That's why people were like, fuck this guy. And that's when you look at someone like Kerry Von Erich and modernized Cody is very good about that. He makes sure that in any situation he doesn't look weak. And the difference is with the Von Erichs, Kevin specifically he'll really get his heat back by just punching you in the face as hard as he can. And Kerry here adds a tremendous dynamic to this because, they don't play this card near as much as they should. You can't play it all the time, to be fair, but like the idea of two guys in a match being so chaotic or so like dangerous that the people who are employed as referees at that promotion are like, I don't want any part of this. Like I can't do this. And so you have to have someone else step in. That's the extremely underrated and underappreciated Kevin Nash Triple H Hell in a Cell match from Bad Blood 03. That was a storyline for that. That's why Foley had to come in, and it made it seem like this is dangerous. And in this case, it very much is, because these guys are blading in Reunion Arena in the fucking mid 80s when God knows what's in the air and what's on the floor. And like you said, Killer Khan, I don't give a fuck, man. You can keep your poison ranas. Just give me a mean, evil foreign heel that bites people. Like that's awesome, dude. And the important thing to call about Terry's work here is the brilliance of working as a good guy or a bad guy is not what a lot of people think it is today, of like snarling at the camera or, oh yeah, you turn your back on me so I chop block your leg. Like Gordy in this match does an unbelievable job of the way his selling is and whatnot, making himself more sympathetic to a crowd that like is already like, they had their mind up made about him. They hated him, and the way he does this, and you couple that with Killer Khan just being so vicious and ruthless in attack, and it makes for a wonderful spectacle. And on top of that, both these guys are just fucking bleeding everywhere, and it's awesome. It's there's a brain buster at one point that's pretty terrifying considering the men involved. Killer Khan goes for a double knee drop, and Gordy moves, and in that ring doing a double knee drop did not seem like it would have been very fun to do. So I don't think he was selling too much. He's just like, oh fuck, like grabbing his knees. What Terry Gordy called it, and I'm not trying to make up my own verbiage here. I think he called it the Oriental Spike that he used to put him out at the end. That, of course, Necro Butcher adopted years and years later, the Asiatic Spike, as he called it. And good move. Someone needs to bring that back. It's a great finish. It's kind of perfect pro wrestling, that this very real and dirty and just fucking fight that epitomizes what wrestling can be in the sense of realism and bleeding and shit, ends with a run-in from the goddamn missing link. It's just like, of course this is how this ends. Y'all already addressed the handshake, not going to add on to that. It did get me thinking though about like that seems to always be the play in wrestling, is that the blood rivals and the mortal enemies shake hands. And so I don't know if we're ever going to
do it the right way.
I was about to say, I don't know if we're ever going to do a Grin Grappler about either of these guys, so this seems like a good opportunity to bring this up. One of my favorite moments ever in wrestling, just the wrestling I like, the guys I like. Chris Hero, Eddie Kingston, loser leaves CZW, their final match in CZW. Kingston won. Kingston's crying after the match. Hero's emotional because he's leaving. And Hero finally tries to bury the hatchet and extends his hand to Eddie Kingston. And Kingston, with tears running down his face, just goes, "Fuck you, motherfucker," and leaves the ring. I literally just got chills like recounting that in my brain. So that reminded me of this here, but different time, different set of circumstances, different feud. And Gordy's so great when Kerry puts his hand out. He's like, "Hey, man, I don't want any part of that." And then, yeah, like you said, he leaves and he calls him back in. So, I mean, the Von Erichs are still involved in this, but this is one of those matches that you can show people that World Class wasn't just the Von Erich boys getting nuclear heat against, Ric Flair and shit. It was, there was a lot, there were layers.
Incorporated was a huge part of the history of World Class, all the way up to the very end when they merged with Memphis.
USWA.
Yeah. And
how great was that?
Devastation Incorporated versus Eric Embry feud, which is one of the great feuds ever, actually. That feud was awesome.
The Jarrett acquisition being included in the Iron Claw popped me so much.
Dude, it was so good. I laughed out loud in the theater. I was like, I kind of was like, man, they should have got Jeff to play Jerry.
Totally, yeah. Fuck, Jeff should have played Ric Flair, I think, based on how it turned out. But anyway,
Jay Lethal could have played Ric Flair in that.
By the way, I gotta say, Alex, I don't want to get ahead of us, but I think Chris Hero and Eddie Kingston will be Grin Grapplers at some point, right? It feels like
sure.
I think we're safe in that regard. That's happening.
Yeah, we got 30 more years left.
Exactly. Yeah, we just can't start. Speaking of such, if you go to latenightgrin.com, which is looking very snazzy these days with our new background here that Confirmed Shoot created, and you go to the Grin Grappler page, we have the free seasons of Grin Grappler. And then underneath, we have the official Grin Grappler match log that I showed you guys before. So you can see, you see all the matches we've done, and then you can click the link for the grappler we covered them on. You can see that, it's wild to look at. We've done like 160 matches, maybe. The amount of places that we've covered in that journey is hilarious. So that's worth checking out, latenightgrin.com.
That's awesome. And I call out that the boys can attest to it, pardon me, is the hilarity of the fact that after this next match is the first Misawa match we've done in Grin Grappler history.
Yes, indeed. Before we get there, I did want to say it was noticeable to me. There's just over a year between our first and second match. Terry here looks much more like the Terry Gordy that I imagine in my head. Just in that kind of, you can see he's kind of becoming the guy that he looks like in the rest of these matches, right?
He's still in that first match, those first few years, here it looks like he grew into his head. In those first few matches, he's got that big, young Andre fro and shit going on. Yeah,
that's exactly. And his physique's slightly different too. But yeah, as we put a bow on Act 1, what matches do we want to call out? We have to call out the ones we've covered before, right? So the Funks tag that we did with Hansen, and we also did as you mentioned, the other Von Erichs match.
The Texas
Any other
Stadium,
ones to call out?
And yeah, if you have not seen that specific 6-man tag, you want to talk about fucking heat, dude. That's
absolutely. So what would you say the timeline is up until 87? Anything before 87 that we'd like to call out?
There are some hilarious tag matches in All Japan of Gordy and Michael Hayes wrestling. I think there's one where they wrestle Tenryu and I can't remember the other, but just imagine Michael Hayes in early 80s All Japan, and you can imagine how the crowd reacted to him. From the World Class Fridays days, there's singles matches with Kerry and Kevin on weekly episodes that were great. And one to call out, I think it kind of almost made the cut. I know it was in the fold when we were discussing it. Terry's NWA World Title shot against Ric Flair at the Sportatorium is a really fun. It has that predictable Ric Flair World Title finish where I think they do the thing where all four shoulders are down and then Rick does that shit at the last second. But it's that's a fascinating one, similar to the Killer Khan match of watching the Dallas crowd begrudgingly get behind Terry Gordy of like, oh no, okay, we want to see you beat this guy. And also just because I'm a fucking psycho for this, I don't know if the boots Ric Flair wears in that match are beige with red lettering, and I don't know if I've ever seen him wear them in any other match before. I know that sounds really pedantic, but that's the type of shit that catches my eye. So
yeah, this is the Green Grappler, brother. There's no depth you can go to that won't belong here. Here's what it is. So I appreciate it. Oracle, anything to call out in terms of recommendations pre-87?
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff from 82 to 85 in Texas.
Yeah.
Just all kinds. There's a couple of good AWA matches in 85. The Freebirds weren't great in AWA, but there are a few good matches in there. I can't remember. Maybe it was the Roadies that they feuded with. I think it might be the Roadies. I can't remember. But there might have even been a tag with like the Hennigs, Larry and Kurt. One that was pretty decent. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong on that.
It sounds fun. I hope you're right.
But there's also of course 86 UWF. I mean, there's a bunch of tremendous stuff of them. Terry in there, of course, and we'll cover his feud with Dr. Death here, but yeah, I mean, there's not much Georgia footage, is there, from the early 80s?
I don't believe so, no.
I think the clips and stuff are really good, but like that's basically all we have. The very early Mid-South stuff with like the JYD feud is really good too, but I think we only have really clips of that too as well, unfortunately.
Shame, man. There's a lot of lost stuff when it comes to that. It's a shame.
Yeah.
It really is. But yeah, again, it's worth. I said it earlier. We started this journey 9 years into Terry's career somehow, and he was 22. So, I think that paints a picture.
13 years old,
It's wild, man.
I mean, as someone who grew up in the area, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw a bunch of 15, 16-year-old kids in a ring, man.
For sure.
Wrestling,
yeah.
like shindies and shit, like that. That's the thing.
It totally shaped his style because he always bumped a lot as a big man. And it's because when he started, he was a kid. Like, of course, he had to bump a lot, right? He wasn't going to, he wasn't going to be working like an All Japan horse at 14 years old. So it definitely shaped the wrestler he became. All right, Act 2, 1987, February 6th. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, who I think in history is most famous in terms of in relation to Gordy, I should say, most famous for being partners. But they were, famed foes in the 80s. They had a real feud in the 80s. This is the Universal Wrestling Federation, I should say, which is called Bill Watts, and this is the attempt to be national. Right? We're already like a year underway here. I want to say I could be wrong on the timeline there, but from what I understand, Gordy was Watts' pick. Right, that was going to be the guy. I'm pretty sure. Which is fascinating. The idea of like in your head you put Hogan, Flair, and Terry would be the third. Like it's just weird to think about. But yeah, I think this rivalry has kind of been slightly lost to history because people just think of them as a team. But they did some really good stuff opposite each other, and this match is no different. Another Texas Death match, so I don't want to reiterate the issues of that ruling. Trent Alex is muted. I'm not sure if he knows that or not. But
sorry, I was mumbling to myself. I always do this when I watch Dr. Death matches because he's the oldest person I've ever seen. 26 years old in this match.
Yeah, that actually makes all of the Gordy stuff like completely believable by comparison, right? That's unfathomable. Speaking of guys look menacing, good God, man. Yeah. The thing that immediately stands out of the bell when they're trading punches, Gordy has that great with the hair, the way he would sell punches, right? It always looked great, throwing his hair back.
Oh shit, we forgot to call out Gordy being Gordy after the Killer Khan match when he does that thing where he gets in the ring and he stumbles over himself and takes a back bump, just like rolling around the ring.
That was very him.
And that's to your point. What he does here, he does the big. It's the shit of like. He's someone we point to as saying like he made it look real, but at the same time he has like the histrionics of what makes a pro wrestler because he's so like big and flies backwards. And yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's like good. his the whole presentation of it all is just very wide and loud. It's great.
Yeah, Yeah, it's kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier. One of the reasons I think he's interesting is there is a little bit of a contrast there, right? In terms of like, with his look, he could be kind of goofy, but he was always scary, like it's a very, whereas you look at Dr. Death, he's very much more like it's one note in that regard, right? Like he's a badass. There's not really much beyond that, and that doesn't need to be. He's a badass. He was believable in that. He's called Dr. Death, bro. It worked. But this match, I actually wasn't super pumped about watching this, just because while I'd seen a couple of their 80s matches, like Texas Death, and I kind of changed my mind a lot on Dr. Death. I thought they pushed a really good pace here. I thought this kicked ass, honestly. Really enjoyed this. Oracle, what did you make of Gordy and Williams here?
Yeah, very similar, to the previous match, in that they just kind of, but not quite as bloody,
Right.
and until the very end. But they're just kind of trading momentum. One guy takes over, and they're punching and kicking and just beating the shit out of each other. Hitting big clotheslines and stuff. The one thing I do want to recall, because I'd gotten it mixed up, because we saw two Texas Death matches in a row.
Yes.
The finish to the com match was the spike. This was both got knocked down, and the finish is great because both got knocked down, and then the guy in the got on the ring announcer said both guys got to get up, and the crowd's great. They're counting with them, and it's a great spot where just Dr. Death just throws one big punch and knocks down.
Yep. And the ref turns, and
Yep, knocks down Gordy at the end. But just a great finish. Terry Gordy bleeds another gusher here. I mean,
yes,
Alex is right. The dude just doesn't. I mean, I tell you. I mean, he sticks that sucker in there. An inch. And lets it rain. He's not. He ain't no Dwayne the Rock Johnson blader. He's gonna go in there and fucking
carefully find the hairline.
I think they had slightly different aspirations, right?
Perfect.
I think maybe, yeah.
Just a great match. Just two big hosses beating the fuck out of each other. I mean, a lot of '80s death matches, Texas death matches, run.
They
Gordy
do.
and Khan sticks out because it's such the story behind
That's
it. And
the violence too.
Right?
Yeah, the violence more.
But they're all kind of run together, but they're all work. Just when you have the right guys in there, and you have the right finish like this match, it's always going to be good. Man.
Yeah,
these guys knew what they were doing.
They have that little kind of thing of they play around with Terry. He doesn't accept the pinfall, right? A couple of times, and at the end, Dr. Death does it back to him, and they do a whole deal. They kind of build to Williams' own pile drive, and the place they rock for that. They really react to that. There's like one part. There's one moment early where they sit in a headlock, and I was thinking, here they go. They're getting this. They're taking notes for the big tag run ahead of them. But honestly, it's and they really do push a pace here. Like they're going, man. Two big dudes, obviously, super athletic, and I really enjoyed this, Alex. What did you make of it?
Well, the jump start of this had, I assume it was Bill Watts that picked this, but if it wasn't, add Steve Williams to the forever growing list of dumb, arrogant Americans who don't actually understand what the song "Born in the USA" is about. But that's Trump's probably going to use that for his next campaign too. So anyway, if you never read the lyrics to that song, I advise doing so before you create a patriotic anthem. It's incredible work from Doc here, man. I'm not, in my experience with his matches, used to really seeing him push that singles babyface pace of like controlling the match, but then also like getting the crowd fired up. And I always think of Doc doing the running in place shit and stuff, but it's just a little bit different here, and the crowd definitely did not like Terry Gordy, and I think I yelled out loud when Dr. Death did a float over suplex. he hits a vertical suplex and then floats over in a way that a guy for his size shouldn't. Like I said, he was 26 years old, so they had the world in front of him there.
He has moments where he is like the coolest wrestler imaginable, right? Like he
Oh,
doesn't always stay there for me, but Dr. Death will have flashes where it's like
some of that shit, like a 93, 94 All Japan dude.
Yes.
Oh my god.
There are like several nights that dude's career where he was unbelievably great. It was incredible.
Forgive me, did he win Champions Carnival in 94, or did he make it to the finals with Kawada? I can't remember who won that.
I'm gonna check that.
Yeah. I know he beat Misawa for the Triple Crown, right? Because that's the one where he kept dropping him on his doing the backdrop driver.
Yeah. The ones with Kobashi are like terrifying. Like not even like joking. Like Kobashi could have like ended up in a wheelchair from those.
Like honestly, like that Misawa title switch is like one of the great matches I've ever seen. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Joe's reaction's accurate. It's
Grim. It is what it is.
Sure,
yeah,
it is an absolutely incredible match.
So this is so tense in a way of the opening stretches here. We're doing headlock takeovers and shit, but every time we get back to our feet, immediate collar and elbow, and then they'll be throwing some punch. Those classic Gordy punches in there.
Mm-hmm.
It holds this sense of tension throughout it, even if it is the Texas Death Match with the 10 count in between. That I agree kind of kills momentum at points. But all right, so there are several pile drivers in this match, none of which are more yell-inducing than the first one Terry Gordy hits on Dr. Death.
Beautiful.
Dr. Death goes for a back body drop. Gordy like runs and slides in position for a pile driver and gives him just kind of one of those short ones, and it just looks devastating. It's fantastic. When we do get to the moment, I think Doc blades at one point, but he kind of has just a little bit going on. And then Gordy tells him, "All right, just stick with me, kid. You'll be all right." And he takes him on the outside of the ring, and Gordy just mass transits himself, and he is pouring hot. And it takes a while for you, the viewer, to like realize it because he has all that hair in his face. But once you do, he's like leaking all over his chest, and every time he grapples with Doc comes back with like blood on him or like on his gear or something. It's a fantastic visual. I don't know why it's this late in the match I made this note. Probably just to pop Joe. This is the one Gordy has the Sakuraba wrap going up his whole left leg throughout the match.
Yeah, so to that point, because I did some reading about this. So from what I understand, Terry Gordy, he tore both his ACLs and didn't have surgery on either of them at this point in time. 87 was the year, because I looked it up after seeing this, and he doesn't have a brace on. He just has them like wrapped, like Sakuraba, as you said. But it's like he's big, man. Like he's like, what is he at 280? Like it's crazy,
psychotic.
And I think you see it when we get to the last match. Like it's a great match, but I think you can see that Terry's feeling it physically by that point, just at 32. But of course, there's a lot of years behind him. But But before you carry on, Alex, I just want to note, Champion Carnival 94, he got to the final and lost to Kawada. So
okay, all right. Yep. I'm just picturing Gordy at his doctor asking, let me ask you, if I don't have surgery, can I live comfortably? Can I go on comfortably? Sir, you shouldn't be comfortable right now. As we mentioned, Doc finally hits the pile driver after getting this incredible crowd reaction where he's just kind of motioning for it, and picks him up, gives it to him. And then what you don't see hardly at all anymore in the course of history, you have not really seen because it's hard to get the crowd behind it. He does the thing of the good guy that wants to continue beating the shit out of the bad guy. And as was recently chronicled brilliantly, I might add, by our own Joel Hubert, in discussion of the Kurt Angle, Ken Anderson cage match, that makes shit memorable, of like good guys that want to continue the beating, and that this guy's been such a son of a bitch, he deserves this. But in kind of the brilliance of this match is it immediately backfires. Like he had the match won, and then he hung out the party too long, and they clonk heads. The ref's distracted as Oracle kind of dissected. Was it Precious Angel? I can't remember the name of Terry's manager in this, but throws the water in his face. It wakes him up, only to get greeted by an uppercut from Dr. Death, and Doc wins the match. And boy, that crowd was sure happy when he won. it doesn't hold a candle to what we saw in the World Class days, but having gone through like the Mid-South set and a lot of the Mid-South, stuff with JYD, and they had some crowds, brother, that were hot for the product that they had. They lost it pretty quick, but they had a moment in the sun there, and Doc was definitely one of their favorite sons.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a hell of a time. I actually was. Again, so I was surprised how much I like this, to be honest with you, with that step especially. So, really strong match. I'd be intrigued to see if Williams had any other matches of this caliber by this point, because like in the late '80s, I'm not particularly fond of some of Dr. Death stuff. So this really stood out how good it was, So, and again, that speaks to Gordy's experience at this point. He's like what, a 14, 13-year pro or something like that. So I think it shows. All right. Up next, it was just mentioned by Alex a moment ago. The Grin Grappler debut for Misawa. Misawa Misawa in the building here, 1991, June 1st.
Everyone wipe your nose.
Gordy is...
Misawa.
No joke, one of the best theme songs in the history of wrestling.
Incredible, yeah. Especially when paired with that presentation, it's magic. As I kind of got into earlier, so Gordy has been an All Japan regular for years at this point. And in 1990, I want to say, I should have noted it. I think it's 1990. He has two like really brief Triple Crown title reigns, right? He has it like a couple days each time. So that
was also I learned this in prepping for this. I thought Kerry just had like the jumbo defense and that was it, but Kerry defended the NWA title against Terry in Fort Worth. He was one of
so
that's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool. Terry is in great shape here, man. He looks great physically here. And I think it shows in the match. I love the intensity before the bell. It takes them a while. I'd say this: the bell, the start is actually exciting. Right? They have those kind of clinch elbows they're throwing. That kicks ass.
Man,
they slow a little from there.
Forearms and elbows like Misawa, bro.
No, it's special. Yeah, then that's like a theme throughout this match in particular.
Terry won early. That's
it's awesome. Terry gets busted open at some point too, right? I'm pretty sure. The intensity for the bell is great. It's the first half of the match. The pace does slow quite a bit, but they get them and it comes back up when they do the deal on the floor with the big power bomb on the outside. There's a great rope break near. I mean, this is a really strong match. And it was overdue, right? We had to get Misawa in here. So we bent the rules of our acts a little bit, Alex. But nonetheless, here it is. Misawa and Terry Gordy. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it felt like this needed to be included. This is like peak Misawa in terms of presentation too, because he's Misawa never had the fucking Drew McIntyre abs or something, but like he's got the pecs and the big shoulders here.
Yeah.
It's he looks great. And Gordy, to the discussion that has been had numerous times in Grin Grappler history, it's always a novelty, and especially in a contained environment like this, watching those guys back in the day when going to Japan meant something, how they would change things up, and both offensively and defensively, Terry Gordy's a different wrestler in this. Those big windmilling punches aren't there. The big like wild selling is not there. It's it was just a different thing, man. And we talked about that, be it Randy Savage, Bret Hart, whoever. We talk about Hogan, especially. That is like the fodder for Twitter engagement now, is people posting clips of Hogan wrestling in Japan and being like, "Have you seen this?" So it was just a different beast altogether. And in this, Misawa is a wrestler that like I have gone back and forth on so many times in my life as a fan, not even like publicly. I used to do a bit where I said he was one of the best wrestlers ever, because like I went through a phase where I was just like so into him. And then like watching this today, it'd been a while since I sat down and like watched a Misawa match. And I was like, God, he's fucking boring. And then as soon as he starts working like his comeback, I'm like, that's it. I'm like,
yeah,
that's the whole deal. It's like his style was just especially if we want to do comparatively like the four pillars, where we're going to end tonight's journey is unquestionably the one who was the best babyface of those guys. And then, like, you know, Kawada was just a real son of a bitch. Taue was, he had really good moments of like fire and whatnot, but like it was Misawa, his whole thing was just like the competitor, and he never like held back either. So like when he's getting beat up and just kind of, you know, on the mend, when he works his comeback, it also includes stomping guys when they're down and like kicking them and like fucking, you know, doing what it takes to win. And it's he's just a different wrestler than anybody else. And
He did something that is very unique, and I say this because I think I think he might be the best ever. He did something that I think it was PWO Lost described one time, layered selling.
yes,
where you kind of don't realize in the first half, but in the second half you realize that like he's selling sort of the accumulation of damage and like is selling in his comeback. There's layers to it that nobody has ever achieved to
the pillars,
that degree.
They each sold very differently, didn't they? That's the thing, like very differently. Like Kobashi we'll get to, but he was the most theatrical salesman. Kawada had that kind of he had those realistic knockout sales. Like legitimate sell. Misawa, it's interesting because there are definitely matches you'll watch and he can be very dry. Very dry. But Alex is right, and I agree with the point about the selling in terms of you kind of realize eventually that he's often the secret source of the matches you're liking. Yep. Even though he's not the guy that like if you watch one match, you may be more impressed by the other guy. I mean, if you watch 10 matches, at some point you kind of go, well,
it's like he makes the first half of the match make more sense or come off better in the second half of the match.
That is exactly what happened with me today. That's like perfect way of phrasing it. Yeah.
I mean, and to kind of go back with what you were first saying, he really is one of the greatest wrestlers ever. It's just, you know, when you watch, he's just a unique, a unique one of the greats. Just a unique wrestler.
It's on display here. It's very famously on display in the series with Kobashi. Like he's also not one of those guys that ever lets you know that he's got this in the bag. Like he's always going for like, you know, the finish, the knockout, and you know he just. It's so weird because he was so beloved for a period of time, but he never had to do the are you with me type thing, and it was just a different like skill set. And I think because I've talked about this on here before too, like a lot of older wrestlers like that to me are like old records that I'll go through phases of going back through and listening. And it had been so long since I sat down and watched just like a Misawa classic, and watching it today, I went through like the whole gamut of emotions where I was like, man, did I overrate this guy? And then by the end of the match, I'm like, God, this guy's one of the greatest wrestlers that's ever done it.
Right.
And I know we're not talking about Misawa, but it feels for a wrestler of his stature that for him to be making his Grin Grappler debut, we take a little bit of time to focus on him. So
absolutely.
Gordy, like I said, toned down in this. My note says grapple fuck Gordy, because the beginning of this is pretty much just they could have taken the ropes off. This was Bloodsport, baby, here at the beginning. It's just the ruthlessness of both of them. It's the Japanese crowd always loved the sympathetic babyface. They're clearly behind their countrymen here in Misawa, but both of them are just displaying like, fuck this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. Not to the extent of like cheating, but they're just, you know, beating the shit out of each other and not giving no quarter drawn. And yeah, we get some juice at one point, which this state, that was becoming more and more rare in all Japan. You know, we had Abby and Brody and those guys there for a while, but here, like, blood wasn't as commonplace. And you know, when it hits the screen or whatever, and they see Gordy, we get Terry Gordy trying to sharpshooter. Cool. And dude, this, I mean, it's wrestling, so it's bound to happen. They do the thing. Misawa goes for the frog splash. Gordy gets his knees up. Misawa eats those just like fucking a bucket of chicken, dude. He just goes right into it. And the closing stretch of this match, man, the pacing of this is unreal. And I think I read like Dave at the time just gave this like 3.5, which, this seems like something that would have been right up his alley. Possibly, there wasn't a dramatic face off or something, but the closing stretch of this is unbelievable. Like it's not even necessarily like a sense of urgency. It's just both of these guys are like the idea of like, fuck, I got to do this now. What is this going to take? And now I got to do this. The German suplex is unbelievable. When Gordy goes for the lariat, he ducks it. And just like, that's when Gordy unleashes the big pronounced like, whoa, like, and the crowd, it's just perfect. They eat it up. And as we've seen in the past, when we've watched All Japan matches from this time period or a bit earlier, the Gaijin makes sure to kick out at 3.00001.
Oh, yeah.
Like he gets that up, and I like the post match too, where the crowd is like they turn on Terry because he's a sore loser. I like that part of it. It's good shit. Fantastic. This is a tremendous piece of business. A wonderful way to introduce Misawa into the fold, into canon, and yeah, I'd seen this before. It had been many years, but could not be complimentary enough about this match.
Yeah, the kind of closing stretches of these matches, they have that very particular cadence, right?
King's
It's
Road
like,
is the best closing stretches in history of
yeah,
wrestling. I mean, they're just, it's just not, it's not.
I find it hard to put my finger on why, but as soon as you see it, you recognize it immediately. It has a very particular like rhythm, right? And the way the people read that kind of rumbling that you get, it's like it happens in the last match we do here too. But Oracle, what did you make of Gordy and Misawa, mate?
Oh yeah, this was great shit, man. Like just as like the early exchange of the forearm. Oh my god, dude! Like Terry eats a huge forearm from Misawa here. Yeah, as Alex pointed out, the first half of the match isn't as memorable, but it all makes more sense and delivers in the second half. And just the second half and the finishing stretch are incredible. And to kind of summarize Gordy here, like it shows how versatile of a worker he was. That he could go and work so well in the Kings Road style, right?
I
Like
agree.
he at this point he's 30 years old and has 17 years of experience. And you laugh. I mean, and I mean, we laugh because it's just insane, right? Like, he, he could work the Southern the Southern style that he was, raised in, but it just shows his versatility where he could get over as like, kind of a goofy stooging heel, as Alex has pointed out in some of his matches, or like a badass heel, or like badass baby face, like a in the Killer Khan match, or classic Dick heel with a valet in Mid South, work tags, work singles, trios, whatever. And he can come in and he can work different styles all together, in a different country, and a style that has a lot of expectation, especially at this time, of what people, want to see, and what that audience expects to see in terms of offense and pacing and whatnot. And he was able to deliver in spades, and he was hitting all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't see him necessarily hit, in a match, against whoever, say Doc, or One Man Gang in 1986, 1987, or
Mhm.
the Von Erichs in 1983, 84. He was, hitting DDTs and pile drivers and, taking all these big bumps. It was a really good. It just shows how much of a pro he was, like, and also kind of shows that even at 30 years old, when you have 17 years of experience,
Right.
at 30 years old, I mean, look at somebody like Ray Jr. Like when you work as a kid, there are obviously plus and minuses to that, but like in terms of being like an in-ring worker, you're
There's a
especially back
knack.
then,
Yeah.
I mean, you're just you're able to travel the world and work these territories and stuff, and you're just, by the time Terry Gordy's 25 years old, it's 1986. Territories are dead. They're they're on their dying leaf.
Yeah.
And he's been in the business for 12 years. It's incredible. But
Absolutely. I think when you talk about being able to adjust from one role to the next, I think sometimes modern fans look at that as like these like Christian Bale transformations, which isn't really what you're describing or what Terry Gordy's doing, right? He always feels like Terry Gordy. He's just highlighting different parts of his game. There's something to be said for that. Like, don't get me wrong, some guys are great. Like they fully play characters, and that's a lot. The wrestling now is different, and that's fine. But this is never, it's like he's never doing that so much as what you're describing is he's just, turning up the volume on different parts of himself. And here he's much more sports-like. So yeah, it's very interesting. Definitely different, I think. All right. Let's shout out some other matches from, I guess we'll do like the late 80s and then we'll just do the 90s as the third. That makes sense, even though we bled over a little bit here. Again, prior Grin Grappler match, the Tenryu Kawada tag alongside Hansen. That was on the Stan Hansen Grin Grappler. Check it out. And also, I think it's worth noting the 89 War Games, which is on like one of the greatest wrestling shows ever. And it isn't the main event of the show, and it isn't like one of the, isn't the match people necessarily remember. That match is a hoot, though. It's really fun. So, 89. Yeah.
The promo before is, was it Baltimore where it was? I'm trying to remember where the show was. Yeah.
Yep.
We're gonna drop the bomb on Baltimore. That's the promo before the match.
Tremendous. Right. Other call outs for late 80s Terry Gordy, fellas. Anything come on?
So is Terry in World Class when the Freebirds are actually babyface in '88, or is he not there?
That I don't know.
That's not really a match recommended because I'm just curious. Because I remember like they came back in '88 and they were like super over as babyfaces.
I'm sure, yeah.
But a lot of those tags, like a lot of those tags from the '88 Tag League, right? Including the one we covered. I think he's got a few more UWF matches in '87, right? That are really, really good.
He had matches with Ted DiBiase and Jim Duggan that are worth seeking out.
Yeah. The Duggan ones were what I was thinking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tremendous. All right, Alex, anything come on, mate?
Just those ones, and then I haven't watched it yet, but I dog-eared a singles match he had with Tenryu in '89 that I'm going to check out. So, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, I'll let you know how it turns out.
That feels like it'll be fun, right? That's got to be. Really, I'm pretty confident on that. All right. Tremendous. Act 3, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this thus far, wherever you're watching. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. If you are watching on the latter, please give us the thumbs up. And if you're watching elsewhere, do so at your leisure. Okay, Act 3. We head to World Championship Wrestling. It is June 1992. Bill Watts is at the wheel. And this has always fascinated me. Because this was taped, this clash. And it aired after the pay-per-view. This has always confused me. Which means that this aired after their pay-per-view match that goes 30. So,
yeah, on brand.
World Championship Wrestling. This was a big. Watts had just taken over, and this was like a big project. Was the NWA Tag Tournament because he wanted to, kind of ground it and have this sports presentation. The big centerpiece of that was the Miracle Violence Connection, Dr. Death and Terry Gordy, who were, obviously all Japan wrestlers. It should be noted, we previously did Bam Bam and Vader versus the Steiners, which is legitimately like a week after this match, which politically must have been chaos, right? Like that fascinates me. So they do this weird deal where this is supposed to be the first round. Williams and Gordy beat the O'Days, the Australian team, and then they injure the Puerto Rican team that's supposed to wrestle the Steiners. And then as the heels, they cut a promo about like, this is the match everyone wants to see anyway. So now that your opponents aren't here, let's just do it tonight. And they just do it. Now,
Bill Watts comes out there.
It's always baffled me. The entire promotion buries the NWA. like buries them and talks about how the NWA president can resign for a weekend. We want to see the match. It is so weird. I have no idea why or what is going on here, but the match happens nonetheless. Jim Ross is so excited about this.
Oh,
match.
dude, yeah, he's losing his shit.
He's so excited. And I've always liked this match an awful lot. We had a little bit of debate about which one we should do. And Alex, you said you hadn't seen this.
The right one.
Yeah, I think so too. Right?
Yeah,
you hadn't seen this, Alex, right?
This is the one where I think they were. Is the one you referenced? They were beating the shit out of each other in this. Alex.
I think I conflated the two of them. Yeah, so
I think so too. Yeah, because this is the real key difference. This is about 20 minutes shorter, and I think that's to the benefit of all parties.
Yeah.
This is a classic Oracle of Wrestling match in that it really threatens to be unprofessional, but they.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're navigating that at all times, but this is physical, and it kicks some serious ass. Oracle, talk to us about.
So this took place at Charleston, South Carolina, at the Citadel. My father and brother were at this. Dylan was definitely at it. Dad probably was, but Dad, he didn't go to all of this, but like he went to most of them. But Dylan was definitely at this one because I remember I was talking to him Sting's retirement night, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was at the Clash in Savannah, where because we were living in Charleston, but his best friend's dad worked in the arenas, worked in the like he was like one of the guys who worked like backstage in the arenas, so he could also get him into like I think he would work at like the Savannah one too, or like one in Columbia, so they would travel around and see like basically WCW from like 80, 88, 89 to like 90, like to like 94. So like, imagine that, Joe. Imagine getting to see all that.
The whole time you're saying, I'm just like, man, if we could build a time machine.
Yeah. So my brother was at this one, but this match fucking rules. I'm getting up to go to. I'm making a pizza. I'm watching this late on Sunday night, and like. Sometimes I multitask. I'm going to get my pizza out, cut it, or whatever, and all of a sudden, I hear JR go, Terry Gordy going for a single leg on a fucking Steiner to start the match. And I go in there, and Terry's trying to do a single leg, and Rick's like sprawling out, like fucking like
they're wrestling, bro.
Like Rick's like tearing him up on the mat, like Terry's trying to do a fucking single leg with a fucking amateur star, and like, dude. There's a famous spot in this where like they're just doing the amateur stuff, wrestling around, being respectable. They and help me remember who's who. Both can intervene here. It's been a couple of days, but one of the Steiners in the corner, somebody gets slapped in the face.
Rick gets slapped by Terry.
Just fucking double legs Terry and gives him like a shoot spine buster from a double leg position,
and punches him in the face a lot too.
Fucking shit ever, and the crowd pops.
You can see Jesse marking out in the background of the commentary table. I love it, Ross.
And of course, JR's call's tremendous on this, and they're just beating the hell out of each other. And then, of course, there's the clip that Joe shows. Was it Doc who throws the clothesline on Rick?
Yeah, and Rick takes that bump.
Mm-hmm. He just fucking kills him with it. Rick takes an insane bump, and dude, they're just beating the shit out of each other. There's limb work in this. They start working over Scott's leg, and like, it's awesome. And of course, they're doing all this crazy shit. There's an incredible near fall, and correct me if I'm wrong again. Scott's the one who takes it, right? The fucking Gorilla Plus, the Gorilla Press slam into the body
bomb,
slam. The most incredible. Scott kicks out, and of course, there's this great finish where it looks awesome too. Where Scott's like finally coming back, he's trying to lift up suplex, and it's Terry, right, who clips him.
Yeah, and then Doc Death falls in the pin.
Right in the just looks nasty as hell. It looks like it hurts like a motherfucker. And of course, the Miracle Violence Connection still the win, but this whole match they're just beating the shit out of it, just clotheslines and shit, and like because like the amateur stuff is like awesome but like funny at the beginning because like Terry Gordy's over here trying to fucking single leg on fucking Rick Steiner to start the match. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then like they just after that after the first 5 minutes they just start tearing into each other. Crowd goes because the crowd's kind of like whatever. They start getting hot for it, and like they're doing all kinds of shit, dropping each other on their heads, and like big clotheslines, and like big personalities, big dudes, like macho shit. Like this kicked ass, man. I'm glad that we kind of, because we were kind of running. We felt like we needed to have a Steiners tag, Steiners
Right.
MVC tag, and we were all kind of like, Joe was like, I don't know, that Beach Blast match is 30 minutes, I don't know, and then Alex was like, there's definitely one really good one because there's one where they beat the shit out of each other, and I was like,
we found it.
let me go look up the reviews, and it was this clash match. This is some badassery right here, man.
Absolutely, man. And it's you mentioned, like, it sounds dumb, but there is a lot of pride and ego at play, because the reality is these are two teams that are built on an aura of beating the shit out of people, and they're both being used in Japan for rival promotions. So when they're wrestling, they are wrestling. Like, you can see, like, Dr. Death ain't trying to get shown up by these Steiner boys, and vice versa.
Terry trying to do it is hilarious.
That's the charm, yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of ego at play, and it creates this dynamic of, like, the tension when they're wrestling it's you can feel it even without much heat, as you mentioned, Oracle. But the tension with Jim Ross's call, it feels like anything could happen at any moment, and that's paid off with that spot you mentioned with the slap. So yeah, this is one of those ones where you look at it for all the issues with what's WCW, of which there were thousands.
Yeah.
You sometimes see flashes of the wrestling he wanted to present and go, it's there. It's just there's so much that surrounds it, right? It's very. I mean, look at what we set up with this match. We all love the match. Look at the circumstances. I mean, it's ridiculous, but WCW, right? I mean, I'm wearing the hat. It is what it is. Part of the charm. Alex, what did you make of this match?
Yeah, to make the international stipulation work, they had to book Terry Gordy and Steve Williams from Nagawa, Japan.
Yeah, they're ripping Japan. Yeah.
Steve Williams had just turned 32 going into this match, so completely normal. What's the problem? Yeah, this is awesome, and the visual reveal of Gordy and Doc walking through the curtain, they just look like walking death. Like
yes,
if this was coming at you, you would be terrified. And yeah, at this point, Gordy's kind of grown into his physique and everything, and just a terrifying looking individual. Jesse Ventura pronounced amateur over and over and over again, and I think he knows that he wants to nail the point home that he pronounces it differently than you do, so he keeps saying it over and over. Says, I love the amateur wrestling here, Ross.
I'm intrigued, Alex. Did you find this as, sometimes I haven't watched for a while, it's jarring hearing Jesse, the voice of that WWF, doing matches like this, isn't it? It's like a weird alternate timeline thing that it takes some adjusting to, but I love it.
Yeah, you always think of people like Honky Tonk Man or some shit when you hear Jesse Ventura's voice. So yeah, it's jarring is right, especially because it's in such close proximity. It is ridiculous to think about that. They're still they had changed at this point, but just like a year prior, they were doing Sergeant Slaughter defending Iraq against Hulk Hogan. So Scott Steiner's hair is very problematic in this. He has it buzzed above his ears and like leveled off, and then the big waterfall in the back. It's crazy. All right. So also, Oracle, I don't know if you remember, there was a call out. Jesse made sure to reference college football. So Jim Ross was at full mast, and he says, we got a showdown here. It's the Big 10 against the Big 8, Oklahoma and Michigan. And so the part in this match that I was like talking to my screen was when Terry and Scott are grappling and they do the back body drop, and they set up to do the shit where it's going to be the 2 count and they bridge up out of it. And I was like, no fucking way. And that just goes back to like, neither guy did anything wrong. It's just Terry Gordy's built differently than wrestlers. Like Shawn Michaels is a lean guy. Like there's guys you think of that would do that bridge spot. Like Ric Flair, even back in the day. Gordo had really long limbs and a big fucking center, like a core. Like he wasn't like a fat ass or anything, but he just had like a big center. And It fails once, and Scott gets in his head that he's going to make this work if it's the last thing he does on Earth. And he could have given himself a fucking hemorrhage trying to do that shit, dude. He was like trying to force it up. On the last one, you see him like trembling, trying to push fucking Terry Gordy up. It's quite impressive. But the tensions run hot, as we said. There's a point in which I think Doc takes a powder and Terry gets out to kind of console him, and Scott just runs to the ropes and goes, "You ain't shit," and yells, it's, boys, we've been down this road before, and you know what I'm going to say. Scott Steiner's the greatest pro wrestler of all time. He just gets so fucking amped and so hyped up by the littlest of things, and I'm sure that wasn't chemically induced in any way, shape, or form. Right after this, Jim Ross says, "Well, Scott Steiner is a very emotional young man," and I'm like, you could still say the exact same thing about that guy.
Yeah.
There, we called out the decapitation clothesline. Scott, in his big fired up stage, gives Terry Gordy a back body drop where he pretty much throws him into the lights. And again, Gordy's a big son of a bitch. He just hoofs him up, and then called out I don't know if it ever had a name, the military press into the power slam that we called out. That was a Goldberg staple as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's, these guys, it's 4 white dudes out there trying to whip them out and measure them. That's basically what they're doing here, dude. It's the finish is kind of lame for what was built to it. I prefer it over a time limit draw, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like you said, politically, the machinations were.
I've always liked the way they executed it, though.
Yeah.
The way the chop block goes into the pin, I always thought looked cool. But I get your point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's when you see a match like this, you want like a devastating finish that puts a guy down for good, and that's we're not naive to that anymore. We're not children. We know exactly what you just set up, what the plot was surrounding this match. So of course they had to do something. A schmaz, as Brett coined the phrase in Wrestling with Shadows. But yeah, man, this is awesome. This is like the Steiners we've several times have discussed, just specifically early 90s Steiner Brothers is just an unbelievable thing to behold and witness. And with Miracle Violence Connection here, Doc and Gordy, exactly what you said of and we always joke, it inevitably comes back to the jokes about Vader in late 90s not wanting to do jobs in WWF, of like that there was, before the internet, like perforated visibility. Those guys who worked in Japan had to go back to Baba or whoever and be like, "Oh yeah, we took care of business, we held it down, you don't have to worry about anything." It's just it's such a different time, and it's a mindset that I think a lot of younger fans like can't comprehend, like the idea of that. And what that results in is discovering matches like this that are 30 years old, being like, "Holy shit, look at these guys, huh?" But yeah, this is a hoot and a half.
Yeah. Sorry if I missed again brought up, but the moment where Rick makes a hot tag and him and Gordy meet with those trading right hands has to be called out too, right? When they're brawling. Oh my goodness, it's awesome. And that's another case of what we were just talking about. You can't give ground, man. I'm not gonna look like a pussy, I gotta go back. So yeah. Tremendous match. Definitely, I think it's their better match. Don't get me wrong, there's great stuff in the pay-per-view match. It's so bloated, which honestly was an issue with a lot of Miracle Violence Connection matches, right? Like, it was an issue. So
yeah, I definitely like combine the two in my brain, because there was things from this that I remembered specifically, like the clothesline, and then there's like the one thing I remember from the other one that stuck. I think it's the first lockup of the match. I think Gordy drops Rick Steiner on his head, and that's so. I agree. From the perspective of one singular match, we chose this one. If you've never seen the other one, it is a long match, but there's some moments in it that will make you pump your fist or, kind of emote to your television.
That show's worth watching, right? Beach Blast 92 is worth watching in general. You got Rude Steamboat, you got Cactus and Sting, and you got the main event. So yeah, that's worth watching in general. Speaking of worth watching, our final match of the night, May 21st, 1993. For I think, based on what I read today, I think this is probably Terry's most kind of critically revered match generally. Like if you did a tweet, what's Terry's best singles match? I think this would be the most common answer, I would say.
And this was how long after this was the stroke? It was just a couple months, right?
3 months, yeah. 3 months.
Jesus.
So Kenta Kobashi he's like climbing here, and this is a significant match, and he's like ascent because guys like Gordy would always be used as like measuring sticks, right? And
Oh yeah.
this is a really significant match. Like he gets a win here that feels emphatic by the end. And honestly, even before the finish, he just feels like Terry's equal, and that was a big deal, right? Like we always talk about hierarchy. Bubba was probably the best at that, I think, right? Like you could easily map out hierarchy of his roster.
Was this in close proximity to the Hansen match we covered on the Hansen episode?
This would be 2 months prior, I believe.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Because I believe that's July 93. I think Oracle, right? Kobashi and Hansen. July 93?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's right.
Look at this. We're piecing things together here. Oracle, would you dare say here on the Grin Grappler we're telling stories?
That's right.
Always. So yeah, here it is. Kobashi and Gordy. Again, I think we tap into that very familiar Kings Road cadence down the stretch, and the place is rumbling and rocking.
Stomping their feet.
This is quite the deal. Alex, Kobashi and Gordy, mate, take it away.
Man, have you guys heard about this Kenta Kobashi fella? Yeah, I think he was a pretty good wrestler. He settled into a groove. We talk about this in the Hansen match way back in the day, but just unbelievable babyface presence. Like, and here, his mannerisms. When he squares up, he has that rear fist cocked. You squint, you think you're watching Inoki back in his day, man. That's honestly like a lot of what Kobashi does as far as like. Not moonsaults and shit, obviously, but I just mean from like his stance and the boots, the drop kick and shit. Like he obviously was a Baba disciple, but I would not be shocked if he told me he watched a lot of Inoki shit from the 70s and tried to like mimic some of the mannerisms of it. And Gordy here is, as you have called out, he's clearly not quite a spent force yet, but is not the same guy. Yeah, and he's not even 35 here, which is terrifying to think about. It's
he's 32 years old, bro.
I was watching. I'm 36. I think I look a little better than Terry Gordy does in this match at 32.
But would you look better wrestling Kenta Kobashi in Tokyo? That's the question, really.
No. To be fair, he could probably figure out how to get a good match out of me. It's like, all right, just we get in the opening exchange, the wrestling and whatnot. I love this moment where Kobashi does that rolling cradle, the rolling crab hold, where he rolls him around the ring, and then Gordy gets up and does the thing like his equilibrium's messed up and the camera's on him. He goes, "What the fuck?" Like he just, he's trying to figure out what this guy's trying to do to him. So this is similar to the Misawa match in the sense of high impact. When we get to the closing stretch, it's not quite as dramatic as the Misawa match in terms of like kickouts and going the extra mile to get the upper hand. But one thing that is on full display here that's not in the Misawa match is this overwhelming sense of urgency that Kobashi has the entirety of the match, like trying to get everything he can to, like, if nothing else, get this guy down to a knee, and that's, different styles and whatnot, but it makes for an interesting match here. And from the Gordy perspective, this 32-year-old broken down vet is just trying to keep up with this, this young kid. And it makes for some like an memorable dynamic. It's an enjoyable match, but the dynamic between the two here is very evident, and it's great. And it's the moonsault. I always, I'm a whore for a match that a guy just keeps trying the same move over and over again. I do love something like a Gunther who doesn't really have an assigned finisher that just does what it takes to win the match. But I love so much the guy who knows what his sword is and will just use it until it works. And in this case, Kobashi's just going to do that moonsault until it gets the job done. And it eventually does. And as we mentioned discussing the Misawa match, the conclusion here and the aftermath is way more definitive and is definitely way more like the stamp of approval. Like this guy, got the job done. And yeah, excellent. I had never seen this match. I think it was the only one from our lineup that I had never seen before, at least knowingly. I'd confused the Steiner matches, but this one, first time viewing, excellent. It's Kobashi's one of those guys that any singles match of his that I go back and watch, some tag matches sometimes don't do as much for me as others, but his singles matches, dude, especially when he kind of figured out his place, like as like what he was going to be as a pro wrestler. It's like, dude, they're awesome. Like, and none of these either two, with me, my every movie needs to be 90 minutes. There are some of those All Japan matches from that era that like, all right, let's rein it in.
It was an issue for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
None of this nor the Misawa match we discussed, like that was an issue at all. These guys just on the money. Tremendous pro wrestling match.
Yeah, they're both perfect in that regard. 20 minutes, heavyweight slugfests, right? Like they don't overstay their welcome in that regard. I agree. Oracle, what did you think of our last match, mate?
Yeah, this is definitely a good one. I really liked how Alex pointed out kind of the differences, with like Misawa and Kobashi. Like Kobashi is definitely like working with urgency the whole and that's how he always was. And 93 especially was like his big year where he was kind of coming out as like a single star, not just the third guy really. Because in 90 to 92 he was the third guy in the Misawa Kawada group. Feuding with Jumbo's crew. And but yeah, this is good stuff. In some ways, I actually think I like the Misawa match more. I think it's a better match.
I agree.
But it's also a different match, right? Like it's just it's different. Sadly we can granted, the stroke hadn't happened yet, but and sometimes it could just be like your mind playing tricks on you with hindsight. But Terry definitely looked.
He looked like he was in some pain here, to be honest. Yeah.
Yes.
I thought the Misawa match was a more interesting match.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. I think you could argue this was more exciting front to back, but I don't think that makes it better. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They're different. Yeah. I'm with you, though. I get your point.
I think I just preferred the pacing and kind of layout of the Misawa match more. But
it builds more.
But but what I really liked about this was just kind of Gordy, like, taking all this, Misawa off, or Kobashi offense, and like Kobashi being so urgent and just having to find it's kind of the staple Kobashi match in a lot of ways in 93 because he's doing it with so many people, but like this is the one where he gets a win, right? And that's what matters so much is because he hits that second moonsault and gets the victory, and of course the finish is tremendous. But this is just kind of goes to show, Gordy on another, playing field too, where like, using another form of what he can do, as you described it so well. The Misawa match is much more of like an even keel kind of thing, right? This one, granted, it's 2 years before when Misawa had only just beaten Jumbo a year before the Terry Gordy match, in the way that Baba booked, you weren't going to be, it was just a long sort of story arc with these guys. It wasn't just, it was a couple of years, before they really became the ace or whatever. But this is kind of an example of Gordy kind of playing the gatekeeper,
Yeah, the old gunslinger.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really, he's more, like I said, he's
kind of hanging in there, right? He's kind of
he's hanging in there here, where he's more like 50-50 kind of, in presentation with Misawa on the 91 match. Here he's just like the old gunslinger who's just kind of basically like, Kobashi, you got to prove yourself to me, and he's kind of hanging in there and giving Kobashi all that he can. Which is just another good dynamic of him. Probably his last. I don't know if there were any other matches in the summer '93. Maybe there might have been an NVC tag or two, but probably very possibly his last truly good match.
Mm-hmm. It's always cool when we end these journeys with a guy kind of being helped in their own ascent too, right? Which is definitely what we get here. So, I think it was a good note to kind of close on in terms of the matches. I guess we'll do this first, actually. So, we kind of kicked around the idea of doing some stuff post '93, and we quickly, I think, realized it was not the way to go, right? He's so different. Alex, you first kind of reached that conclusion and was talking about doing something and changed your mind. So speak to that a little bit. Let's talk about the rest of Terry Gordy's career and life ultimately, which he was a very different wrestler and man, obviously. Go for it, Alex, best you can.
Yeah. So first of all, the Extreme Warfare Volume 2 match I referenced with Bam Bam Bigelow, I did eventually get a copy of that pressed to DVD. It was just a straight VHS rip. That match is not anything worth seeking out. It's just the novelty of Bam Bam Bigelow wrestled Terry Gordy in the ECW arena. But yeah, for those of you who recently watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode or just kind of know anything about the story in general, I mean, he had a fucking stroke. Like it was the fact that he did manage to come back, and I have mixed feelings on that I'll get to, but the fact that he was able to get in the ring and do what he still did, it's like that's impressive to begin with. As far as like a match perspective, it wasn't the same. I know people cite the IWA King of the Death match. He did the thumbtack match with Cactus Jack, and it's that is not really what I would call like a great match or anything. It has flashes in it. Like there's a part where Terry hits a power bomb. There's a part where Terry does the like psychs himself up. That it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, you can tell that, like flashes of it were still there. I kind of in jest, but also my original thought was we were going to end this. We should have ended this on the Miracle Violence Connection versus the Eliminators match in ECW, which is I think fun for what it is. But the human side of me kind of took over there. I'll explain that match briefly. Of it's just what you think. I made the joke of the Eliminators were big in ECW, and then they stood next to Doc and Gordy, and they, to quote Jerry Lawler's great line, they looked a lot bigger on the Lucky Charms box. And that match is classic ECW in the sense of like no one talking to each other, because that was the show. They had the scaffold built over the ring for Tommy Dreamer and Primetime Brian Lee, and I think that match might have even opened that show, and Perry Saturn climbs up and jumps off the scaffold. Like that's the first thing they do. So there is a hilarious part in that where Doc gets a tag and Cronus whacks the shit out of him with like a clothesline or maybe a shoulder tackle, and you can see him immediately regret it on his face. And then a few seconds later, Doc gets him in a waist lock and just fucking dumps him on his head. It's good shit. But so not to do the retrospective here, Joe, but are you okay with me kind of talking about
go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
That Dark Side of the Ring on Terry Gordy, it definitely picked up a lot of traction. And with the Dark Side of the Ring, those guys, Evan and I forget the other one's name, but they have like what I consider a dream job, and they do a really good job on occasion, most of the time, telling the stories that they tell. But I do sometimes I kind of take umbrage with like Terry Gordy, the Sherry Martel one recently, Junkyard Dog. Like, I sometimes feel like these are positioned as like cautionary tales about pro wrestling, and any line of entertainment or sport, you could find just as many. They're adults that made the decision. In Terry Gordy's case, and I'm not speaking ill of the dead here. He's just a grown man who made the decision to drink as much alcohol and do as many drugs as he could, and that ended up catching up with him. To me, something like Hayabusa or Darren Drozdoff are like cautionary tales about pro wrestling, and I think the cautionary tale on this most recent season of Dark Side of the Ring is John Tenta, a guy who just worked hard, was good at what he did. He was a decent man, and at the end of his wrestling career, he ended up destitute. He died in his 40s from cancer, and not a single person that he worked with came to his funeral. Like, that to me is
That was
and
tragic. Yeah.
and to bring that back to Terry Gordy, to me, the part of his story that's what pro wrestling is, and don't you fucking forget it, is that after he had this massive health situation, like, he probably should have had like a caretaker around him 24/7, but Jimmy Cornette, Paul Heyman, all those local bookers just called him up and said, "Get in the ring and do the power bomb." Like, it's like that's the sad reality of that situation, and kind of the way that was handled. And again, he's a grown man. I'm sure if he would have said, no regrets or anything like that, but it's a fascinating tale, and I think when I was doing our initial research for this, and then that was right after watching that Dark Side of the Ring, it kind of made it more real than it was in my brain before. You know what I mean? So I was like, what we try to do on these shows is to try to show what someone was capable of as a pro wrestler over their career, and it wouldn't have been fair to include that shit. And that's the really sad part about like the executioner thing. Like, it seemed like shockingly, for once, someone's heart was in a decent place in wrestling with the Undertaker and Michael Hayes and a couple guys just like, let's see if we can help him out, and they had that match, and it's just like, it's not going to work. So yeah, I think from trying to present Terry Gordy as a wrestler, it just would have been for naught to do something like that. So I think we, without question, made the right choice in just sticking with pre his stroke.
Yeah, I think so. Oracle, I'm intrigued. Anything on the kind of the final, I guess, almost decade, right, of Terry Gordy's? If not, that's fine. But I thought I'd ask.
As someone who has family members who've had strokes and are do have to have a lot of round the clock care. It's incredible that he even could get into I mean, it's insane. And probably is a little bit let's be honest, ridiculous. But I mean, as far as my memories of and if you can, Joe, I don't know if you posted it earlier or not, but that match, I don't know if you posted the link or not.
Yes. Yeah, I'll do it again.
But it's, to be honest, I mean, this match is not any good. I mean, it's 9 days before his passing, and he's, and it's in the middle of a warehouse in East Ridge, Tennessee, with 75 people. I mean, it's so I mean, but it's an interesting bit of history here. It's not the most thrilling or exciting thing.
That's a personal attachment anecdote, man.
Yeah,
There's value there. There's
and
definitely
I'm
value
glad
to that.
because
Yeah.
it's a match that I remember watching, and I remember watching for years because I'll never forget. We're going to this place weekly at this point in time. We had just started going to this place weekly, and we saw Terry wrestle, and it was in the summer. I remember my uncle came over. We were living in house down in North Georgia at the time, and right below the state line. And my uncle came back over. We were just hanging out. Probably, like, no joke, probably playing. I mean, I don't know if we were or not. Probably playing No Mercy, right? And I remember my uncle just being like, "Terry Gordy died," and we're like, "What?" I was just a kid, but it was still like crazy. Like, by that point, I'd been living in Tennessee for a year. North Georgia, Tennessee for a year, and I knew his legend, and I'd just seen him wrestle a week before, literally 9 days before I saw the guy wrestle. And my uncle's coming down, and telling us about it, and it was just weird. Just a weird thing. But this is a neat bit of history. I'm really glad that Pierce guy who used to have he had like a stand of stuff that he would sell. So I got some cool stuff from him when I was a kid going to those shows. But I'm glad he posted this several years back. But yeah, man. Not much to say. I mean, I've seen a lot of the '96 stuff from ECW and from WWF because I watched Monday Night Wars, and I mean it's not the same thing. The one sort of smile I can get out of it is what was it? The ECW doc from the Rise and Fall of WWE. Was it Jericho who talks about the Kimono Wana Leia thing?
Oh,
where Terry Gordy saying,
I've never seen nothing like this in pro wrestling.
That's a good story, but yeah. So I mean, that's but even with that, I mean, he's got 12 years on tape where he's just kick ass and
so we forgot, in the vein of good stories, we also forgot we left out he was gonna main event like up until that point one of the biggest wrestling events of all time in the Wrestling Summit with Hulk Hogan, and he pulled out because he didn't want a job to Terry.
That rules,
fucking beast, dude.
That is awesome. Absolutely.
Oracle, I was looking at the date on this match, July 7th of 2001, and I don't know why that was 2 weeks, I think maybe to the day, 2 weeks before the Invasion pay-per-view. And to think of just like, there's such a dramatic divide between the Terry Gordy era of wrestling and
this
the
was
Alliance.
A Saturday night, so it would have been July 8th would have been a Sunday. So
15 days
basically 2 weeks to the day. Yep, close to it.
That's also the curse of the wrestling fan, is I think of like what's closest to that, but like the divide between those two is insane. So that's kind of
there's some but it's also crazy to think about, because I remember watching the Raw on Monday, July 9th, 2 days after this. In fact, we'll go through the video. Maybe not live, but we'll go through the video, and I think I'm on this video here in this match.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy to think about that Raw is when the Invasion, is when Team ECW and WCW formed, and Stephanie came out at the end. It's July.
That does feel like it feels like a different.
I remember watching that show. So when you have those memories, I was 8 years old, but like you put those memories together and you realize those were like 48 hours from each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That was 23 years ago, and Stephanie was on Raw last night. So I mean, not too much has changed.
I guess not. Any matches we want to call out from circling back to our third act? So I guess the early 90s. There's a famous Miracle Violence Connection tag with Jumbo and Toway that's like very, very long. It's been a match of debate, but I thought it's worth noting.
Well, here's the chance for you, Joe. Let's do the Miracle Violence Connection discussion. Like we're not. I think we're both on the same page in the sense we're not going to say anybody sucks here. It's just like Doc and Gordy, they rough people up, man. Dumped you on your head, they punch you in the face. Like it's just, I think, and I don't know if we're on the same wavelength here. I remember like in the forum days and shit, the way people would sometimes describe their matches, it made it seem like every match they had was Necro Butcher Samoa Joe, which was not the case at all. Yeah,
it's completely that, because the reality is so far from that it's striking when you see it. Now, again, this doesn't mean they're a bad tag team, but their reputation is, as Alex mentioned, and in their matches, there is a lot of time spent just kind of lying around. And I think part of that is that their matches were often longer than they needed to be. And I think the Steiners match we reviewed kind of proves that. with the rematch, kind of even reiterating it. But like I just mentioned that tag from '92, it's like 32 minutes long, and as dynamic as they could be athletically and physically, they were not particularly.
They were just overwrought,
Yeah, and like watching them do like a heat segment for 15 days, it just wasn't their strength at all.
And not that it's just you don't want to see these two big dudes do excess.
No.
I mean, like it can work some in All Japan because of the style, but like especially stateside when they're over here doing.
Yeah.
It's just not necessary.
Both guys have much better All Japan tags with other partners. It's just history. History.
I like
is
Hansen
kind of
and Gordy much more.
Oh yeah, because Hansen wouldn't do what we just described with Hansen. It was a shootout, right? That's the way he wrestled. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool that it's such like an iconic thing and people like hold it in such high. I think it's neat. I saw someone on a shirt recently. It popped me huge, but it's not quite what you imagine, I guess.
That coupled, and this is just talking about Gordy now. That coupled with the fact that like he had such that iconic pairing in the '90s, but then in the '80s, the Freebirds, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure we talked about, and the fear of it not coming back around, we didn't talk about the Freebirds' 60-day run in the WWF. Like it might have been their first appearance. I don't know where to point you to. I know there's footage of them coming out at Madison Square Garden to Freebird by Leonard Skinner. Which just thinking about that is fucking preposterous. But Andre didn't like them, and I don't think they were the rigors of the road. I think caught up with them pretty quick.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the polite way of saying it, right?
The high octane lifestyle. Yes, indeed. All right, so we've kind of done this, but I think it's we'll circle it once more. We'll close here before we look towards next month's Grappler, which hilarious lineup awaits, I must say, fellas. But as always, we'll close with a conversation about our subject's legacy. We've done a lot of this, right? So I understand, we're kind of underlining at this point. I just want to give everyone a chance to close their, conclude their thoughts,
finish their story.
Finish their story, indeed. I think Terry Gordy's fascinating in that there's definitely a way you can look at his story, so to speak, and see there's an element of what if there. But I do think it's important to focus on, Oracle, would you say 12 years on tape was the number you kind of right? There's a lot, and now more than ever, I think the legacy of the Von Erichs feud is like rich and is something that will probably live on longer than we could have ever imagined now with what's, with the movie and stuff. Because that
immortalized in the movie.
Yeah, it's crazy. I wish they got more of the movie, honestly, but they had so much to tell. It's impossible, right? You can't do as much. But
they had to write one of the brothers out for Christ's sake.
Exactly, right? Because there's that one shot of the drop kick against the Freebirds.
And whoever they cast as Gordy, he knew it was his moment because he memorized the mannerisms and everything, and he was
perfect. Yeah. So that was cool, and that will kind of live on, and I think he will always be a guy that people cite as like that archetype of the big gaijin going to work Japan. He's always a guy that's on those lists. He may not necessarily be at the top of those lists because of how things worked out, and because, frankly, I mean, look at some of the contemporaries we talked about. Like Stan Hansen was there for a lot of that run, right? Like it's hard. But he was a big deal, man. Yep. Like we talked about how much it meant for Kobashi to beat him, like actually beat him with a moonsault. That was a huge thing. A genuine top guy there. So he's a guy I look at as a what if in a couple ways. Firstly, the obvious, right? What happened in '93, but also just. I wonder if, the early 90s in the US wrestling scene are different. I wonder how things look, right? Like, I always am fascinated by, Matt once said it to me, like, with Brett as the champ, imagine if he worked with guys like this, how like weird is that to kind of compute in your brain, like, they're the same timeline, which it's just unfathomable. But yeah, I think there's different versions of his career that go differently, but what we got was significant. I think he's a guy who, as Alex mentioned, gets brought up a lot by like kind of the niche nerd accounts that we all follow. And I think with that, his memory kind of lives on. Hopefully we had a little bit, we had some fun with that tonight and, played our own part. Obviously, Dark Side of the Ring. I noticed on one of the matches we reviewed, all the comments were people saying, I came here off Dark Side of the Ring. That's cool, right? That's one of the cool things that happens from that show. So, yeah, man, he's a a unique one, precocious talent, definitely a prodigy in a lot of ways, but had a lot of great matches, and honestly had a real just natural knack that guys like him, when they're getting so young, things that this listing revealed I didn't necessarily wasn't aware of before. Some of the nuance to his game. He was a smart worker. There's a lot more to it than the physicality. So Terry Gordy, there it is. Oracle, any final thoughts for you, mate, on Terry Gordy?
No, just one of my favorites from the '80s. Had that special sort of '80s wrestler aura that's very, very hard to replicate. They really can't be replicated.
Agree.
One other personal fun fact that I guess not really, but like people that I know, he was trained partially, or at least early on, by Archie Goldie, the Mongolian Stomper, I believe, and Archie was from Knoxville, where I live now, and I know some people who knew him in the county. He was like the jail guy who like worked at the jail. I know some guys who like knew him and like, oh yeah, he was a wrestler. I knew him. He passed away a few years back, but yeah, they knew Archie Goldie when he worked in the jail.
My God.
So it's just another when you're from East Tennessee, everybody knows each other. So
brother.
Tremendous stuff. Alex, any closing thoughts for you?
I say this on a lot of these that we do because we're still, there's a lot of wrestlers to go through, and we kind of thinking about it with what you were just saying too. He had instincts that you can't teach, and his presentation you can't really teach. You can tell until you're blue in the face. You can tell a guy, hey, you got to look big and act big, and you can videotape them doing their entrance and make them watch it 1,000 times and correct them on how they're wrong on it and shit. But like, you got it, or you don't. A performance center could not have bred a Terry Gordy. It's just, and part of that too is he probably was beat up a lot when he was trained, so he knew how to protect himself and whatnot. And in the situation of presentation, that is, he's a true prodigy. That's I said the Rey Mysterio thing earlier, and I like to joke about old Ray from time to time, but it's obvious that like that dude, he started like before his first prom, and it's just like Terry Gordy, of like that, and they figured it out, and they learned it, and they mastered it, and it's just oh, that's mean, and unbelievable. Once in a lifetime type performer, and because I think sometimes he unfairly gets lumped in with old Michael Hayes. I mean, they were obviously tied at the hip at the Freebirds, but like Terry Gordy was a fucking worker. Michael Hayes wasn't. Like Michael Hayes had, I think me and Oracle could put together a match about as good as that guy could. But it's Terry Gordy mastered the Southern Territory, the idea of it, how to perform there, took that to Japan and became a superstar. That's, the Japanese we've talked about with Terry Funk and Stan Hansen. They like that whole idea of seeing, he's wearing a cowboy hat. Oh, he's doing that. But like, you still have to get in there and fucking perform. And Terry Gordy knew how to do that and made a huge splash there. Terry was a bit before, and Hansen kind of bridged that gap a little bit. To where when guys like Misawa and Kobashi wrestled Hansen, it was like reputable, but it still felt like Hansen was kind of old, if that makes sense. Whereas when these guys wrestled Gordy, he was still kind of fresh enough that like, he wasn't there in the 70s and shit. So like,
Right.
that it gives them a bit of clout that they're able to tangle with this guy. And then, I said my piece about his health issues and whatnot. But even after the fact, look, there's only so many guys you can say like dipped in the WWF in the 80s, WCW and ECW in the 90s, had like made a splash in Japan, like, and Splash is kind of underplaying what he did. He, I keep coming back to it. He was a prodigy. He just was a master of the craft, and he took that everywhere, and he took that places even after he was like void of many of his faculties and probably shouldn't have been there to begin with. And the fact that he had a match after that I was considering like putting alongside, we were talking about putting alongside all the other things he did, shows that like even the muscle memory that was there, he was still a fucking stallion in the game. So sad. It's sad that a guy, a man and a guy who had kids and shit he died in his early 40s, that in a sense that probably could have been avoided. But for the sake of wrestling and the legacy he left behind, like just an unbelievable performer. And even in this day and age where like it feels like it honestly, with Twitter and everything, it feels like that no wrestler can be considered underrated anymore, because it feels like everyone will bring someone up and being like, oh, they cooked, or yeah. Have you ever heard of Bull Nakano? People that like bring this shit up, like I was saying earlier, like Hulk Hogan in Japan. Oh, have you heard? You guys heard of this fucking Inoki guy? Like, it just feels like everyone gets their flowers these days, but I don't think Gordy gets enough credit for how good of a wrestler he was, if that makes sense. Like,
I
people,
agree.
they'll post the gifs of him like shoving fans, and people know like the heat that was there for the Von Erich matches and shit. But he was more than an isolated 10-second clip of something. And I honestly, if the matches we did, all three of us came to the same conclusion of that Misawa match, like of just Misawa was an all-time great, but it takes two to tango, and like
For sure.
to put together a match like that, that's all-time business right there. So, yeah, he's a guy I've just come to love so much as a wrestler, I should say, in my older years, and watching these matches succinctly, and knowing the range and the depth of his catalog. A true great, and I hope we did his wrestling career justice with this.
Yeah, I do too. Speaking of such, I guess we should look towards who the next grappler is that will be trying to do their career justice, right? We have 6 candidates. We have 2 big men to kind of follow up on Bam Bam here. We have a dark horse that is purely there to pop me, and we have 3 very big famous ones. All right, here we go. The big men on the board are Big Bubba, the Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, who I think could be very interesting. Came up recently on the Kurt Hennig episode. Some All Japan stuff we could dive into, obviously. And a favorite, certainly, of mine. More famous in that particular category would be Big Van Vader, who has appeared a lot on Grin Grappler, but we've never done an episode for. Dark Horse, that I don't expect to get picked, but he pops me, so I'm going to bring it up. I think one of the best tag wrestlers of the last 20 years, the famed It Factor, Bob Roode, who recently retired from professional wrestling. I think you could. It won't be this year, but we could do a good lineup for him, right? We absolutely could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he has, the Team Canada and stuff, Beer Money, even the Gable tag, right? Like, he's got some really interesting stuff. Ziggler, there's a lot of tag stuff there.
The Bound for Glory street fight with James Storm, like the blow up. Yeah, there's a lot that. One of the most underrated, I just use that word again, underrated, but him and Hideo Itami at TakeOver, all-time piece of business right there, in terms of like no expectations and what it delivered. He's
probably the best example of like TNA's status historically being an issue, in that if his match catalog existed 20 years earlier in different promotions, it would be like a no-brainer for this show, but it feels like a stretch because a lot of it happened in TNA, but the matches are there. We'll get to him, I'm sure.
That first Nakamura match is incredible, man.
I was just about to say, that's still to me the best NXT title match ever.
He has some good stuff with AJ too, of course, in TNA. There's a TV match they have that's really good. Nonetheless,
Factor.
Indeed, great fame. The big 3 here. I almost wonder are too big, but I'm going to bring them up nonetheless. Firstly, we have I'm told he's a good wrestler, the American Dragon, I believe they call him, Bryan Danielson, who I think legitimately may be at a point where I don't know what we would actually say. And then we have...
that would have to be one where we all do like all sleepers, because like everything that can be said about his classics has been.
He has too many great, Finally, we have 2 WrestleMania main eventers in recent times, one of which was in the news today. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or just after his 28-year title reign, we could do the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. Now, I have to be honest with you, fellas. I'm usually against doing guys that are in the midst of their career. Because Roman just finished a chapter, I got to be honest, it intrigued me. I'm just going to throw it out there, it intrigued me, because you'd have Shield, Big Dog, and Tribal Chief. And I just think it could be interesting. So I'm putting it forward. We have Vader, Boss Man, Bob Roode, Bryan Danielson, The Rock, and Roman Reigns.
That's a tough one to choose from.
It's a hell of a War Games team right there.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. What are we thinking? Oracle, where do you go? Right, we haven't got Bob here to decide for us. What do you think?
Bobby Roode is a really interesting one. We just did a big guy, but Vader's he's special,
Yeah, that's easy because he's got so much good stuff.
Danielson, I have some ideas of kind of unheralded matches we could do. That would be interesting. I'd be down for a Roman one. I don't know, man. It's a tough choice. I might let y'all fight it out for this one.
That's just, all of them are compelling, right?
Yeah,
all of them are compelling. Alex, where are you leaning on this?
Immediately, it's either Vader or Bobby Roode is where I go.
This has caught me off guard. Bob Roode being in the game has caught me off guard. Okay, carry on. What was you gonna say?
Danielson again is just like, the fuck are we gonna say? And it's because there would be absolutely no hot takes in that episode. It would just be like, hey, he's like one of the greatest ever. And then, The Rock could be interesting from an engagement standpoint. That'd probably be our smartest bet to do. But where's the fun in that? I don't get to talk about James Storm. Man, The Rock versus James Storm. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Whoa! James Storm, the cowboy. The Rock's been watching you. Oh man.
So Bobby
Those are
Roode,
all really good.
We would split it into, I think, one tag and one singles for every act. So we would do like a beer money tag, the famous tag with Eric Young versus I forget who in 05.
Oh man, you can't skip that Team Canada AMW tag.
That's thank you. I forgot that was
Final Resolution 2005.
We would do that, and we would do
possibly the greatest 2-match combo ever on a pay-per-view.
There you go, beautiful. The third act, the tag match. Here now we're really getting into JHP territory. We gotta do that revival tag, the one where they wrestle with silence for 20 minutes and it fucking rules. We got.
Oh yeah, are you talking about Gable and?
Yeah, that would be the tag for the third act. Would be Kenta. Sorry, Hideo Itami. And the revival tag. I don't know, boys.
Is there a fan cam of that one that they allegedly went like 40 minutes on a house show?
Well, there is. Dax has it, but I think they copyright struck it. So.
That was Dax also had the revival against O'Reilly and Strong from the house show I went to in San Antonio that he put up, and they immediately fucking. Okay. Vader. I feel if Bobby was here, he would go for Vader because that seems up his alley. But I think, and with Roman,
we can always do Roman, right?
And there's like the picks are too obvious, and it's I think recency bias, dude. We're perverts, man. We got to do Bob Roode.
Just retired too, right? Like he hasn't officially retired, but he said he's not going to be a full-time wrestler again. I'm sure he'll do like a Rumble at some point.
Well, in a way, that's like doing The Rock because he agented like The Rock segments and matches and stuff. So
now I'm not even trying to be a dick when I said like two of the guys that were available for this was Owen and Pillman, and I was like, I can't do anymore. Bob Roode's story while he has to
tragedy.
Retire. Yeah, man, like. Bob Roode, while he had to retire at 48, 47, he's got a gig as an agent. I'm told he's killing it. So it'd be, at least it would be like somewhat a guy who did well for himself, and it all worked out. So I think we're doing Bobby Roode, fellas. I can't believe it.
I mean, Joe, you might have underestimated it, but I think the next episode of Grin Grappler will be glorious.
Oh, I think so. I really do think so. There you go. I think this lineup's going to come together very quickly because I'm pretty much like. I think I've 5 matches like already penciled in, So,
yeah.
Doing that Kenta matches because that's like a miracle match. I think.
Yeah,
think we
the
have to do that.
Nakamura match in San Antonio is incredible, but that one
Yes.
from like just people
How-
expected that to be incredible.
How was it good, that Kenta match, dude?
Oh, dude, there's a sequence in that I'm already like glowing over. But yeah, the bound. Yeah, we got we got the wheels in motion here.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, there you go, folks. Grin Grappler, Bobby Roode, up next. I can't. Poor Bob's gonna be so mad. Now I think he'll be into it. Actually, I think he'll be into it.
He'll really like that AMW tag.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go, folks. That's what we're into. Austin Aries will not appear on that Grin Grappler. I'm going to note now. If the singles match for Act 2 will either be the Storm Bloodbath you mentioned, Alex, or we could do the AJ TV title defense, TV World title defense, I should say.
That's a Storm match, man.
I think we have to do that, right?
It's hard for me to turn down a bloodbath.
Let's do that. Storm's then in 3 matches we're doing, which is fitting, I feel. So let's do it. All right.
He's next to Claudio as the greatest tag worker of the modern era. So
there you go. All right. Grin Grappler, Terry Gordy in the books, Bobby Roode ahead of us.
We began this with such hope, and we've ended this in such a degenerate fashion. Bobby Roode, Grin Grappler coming up.
we could have done The Rock or Roman and popped it like a number, and we were like, absolutely not. Let's do Bobby Roode. Oh, well. There you go, folks. I'm excited.
Hell yeah.
I don't know if anyone else is, but we are. So that's what matters most, I guess. All right. Oracle. Any closing thoughts, plugs, promotions, so on and so forth?
10:30 p.m. Eastern. 10:35 p.m. Eastern, roughly. I think we're going to aim for 10:30. We're going to do a Backlash preview where we talk about the worst-looking WWF card in 5 years.
No way. It can't be. Is it that bad?
Break down the draft a little bit too. But the World Wrestling Federation draft. Yeah, so that'll be Friday at 10:30 Eastern. It'll be me, myself. What am I, fucking Jim Carrey?
Maybe.
I could be. Joe, hopefully Bobby's there with us. Myself, yes. Is Chris going to be there?
Chris is going to be there, yeah. It's going to be the Fed 4.
Good.
Back in action. I will say, I concede, they need to stop this 5-match card. They're not going to, but I wish they would. I will say that I think this AJ Cody match, I'm bullish on
good things, but the rest of the card is just...
Yeah. It's shocking. Like that women's triple threat is...
Yeah. I wish they would... We'll do this on Friday, but I just, the mid-card pay-per-view match is a lost art. But...
I miss them, I miss that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, bro.
Years ago and more.
Yeah.
That being said, it's going to be on at noon my time, so I'm happy with that.
Oh, yeah, the timing's great. Like brothers and stuff. So
I was in France last year for the house show. It's the best wrestling crowd I've ever heard or experienced. I'm telling you, this show, I could be wrestling on this show. I think it would go, but they're going to be great, dude. I honestly think it'll be a fun show on crowd alone, but we'll cover that.
And Passionate Martinez in the world title match.
Sports style presentation. This Friday.
5 minutes and it's going to be disgusting, but sorry. Go.
No, you're good. 10:30 p.m. Eastern. 25, 30 minutes after SmackDown, folks. So we'll see you there. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. Speaking as such, as I said, all not through the night. The thumbs up on the YouTube. God bless. Alex, what's the latest with the Contrarians, mate?
Nothing's changed since Friday, my most recent plug. But yeah, the summer event of Peter Bogdanovich and PJ Hogan's respective filmographies. But at Contrarian Prime on YouTube, Twitter. I think Julio started a Threads. Is that the Instagram? We're on Instagram too. So at Contrarian Prime on any of your social media platforms, you can find us there. Patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. $1 subscription will get you access to the numerous pro wrestling projects we've done too, where I discuss the sport of kings to Peruvian immigrant who knows nothing about pro wrestling, and he kind of just makes off the cuff judgments about things. So check it out. And yeah, if you're still listening to this, you're not subscribed to Late Night Grin on YouTube or following on Twitter, what the fuck are you doing? Do it.
Yeah. Also, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to quickly throw this on the screen here. You see this here? This is very snazzy. Now you see,
oh man, look at that.
The entire match log here, as you can see. I mean, this is very excessive. I don't know why I did this, but it popped me. I mean, look at these beautiful JJ Williams photos we're featuring here. I mean, the Hennig is not his, unfortunately. He wasn't around for 93 Raw, but I mean, this is some beautiful stuff. So go check it out, latenightgrin.com. People were asking about where to find some of the old shows. They're all on there, folks. I can't post them to YouTube publicly because it makes me upload them as today, and that would drive me fucking nuts that everything was uploaded in May 2024. But it's all there, latenightgrin.com. So go check it out. Also, we are on all the audio feeds. But before I go, as I've been stressing recently, I know we have a smaller crowd here tonight because these programs are more niche. That will not be changing. Bobby Roode up next. But if you are here and you enjoyed the show, leave a little comment when we get out of here. That was great on the draft show. People were having a lot of fun with that. So you can comment anything. You can comment, Terry Gordy did look younger than Contrarian Alex. You could say Oracle is Jim Carrey. Or you could say Bobby Roode. Who asked for that? Any of those things, or one of your own, comment them below. We appreciate you guys. This was a great time. We wish our best to the great Bobby Two Shoes. We love you, Bobby. Keep grinning. All how. And enjoy this outro, folks. Have a good one.